A dark-haired man reflects with certainty that he has never resented his fate, though the question of wanting an ordinary life lingers. Someone questions the audacity of the beloved daughter of a villainous family to speak of such desires. The cold mechanical click of a revolver hammer being cocked back echoes through the tense atmosphere. The narrator admits that this specific situation is entirely unexpected. Despite the tension, the unseen figure declares that they are actually quite pleased with this turn of events. A hand clad in a dark suit rests casually on a chair, fingers adorned with a ring that signals status. The man points a gun directly at Francesca's chin, smiling as he declares he will not break off their engagement. Francesca stares in shock as the man remarks that it would be a pity to simply throw her away. Leaning in close with the barrel still pressed to her neck, he whispers her name, calling her his sweet love Francesca. Francesca reflects that all she wanted was to be loved and live a normal peaceful life because of her previous existence, yet she is left wondering why this is happening. The scene shifts abruptly to the dark streets where heavy breathing echoes against the stone walls. Two men sprint frantically through a narrow alleyway, glancing back in terror at their pursuer. One of the men screams in confusion, demanding to know what is happening as they run for their lives. A massive net suddenly drops from above, entrapping the fleeing men as Francesca steps into the light. Francesca stands over the trapped men and demands a promise from them. She interrogates the thief, insisting he swear to never plan another robbery again. The thief breaks free and attacks her, shouting that he won't go easy on her just because she is a woman. With a swift movement of her dress and limb, Francesca counters his attack and sends him flying through the air. Francesca asserts that no matter the justification, she will not tolerate his actions. She stands firm, declaring it unacceptable to hurt people and steal their money. The thief groans in pain on the ground, completely incapacitated by her counterattack. Francesca reminds them that this is Calvino family territory and warns that the family does not take kindly to outsiders committing crimes here. The desperate thief argues that without the stolen money, they cannot pay for their children's medical treatments. Francesca pauses, her stern expression softening momentarily as she processes his desperate plea. She sighs, acknowledging that it is her family's responsibility to care for the territory, yet realizing some people can't survive without stealing. Graciano the butler appears from the shadows, thanking Miss Francesca for her patience. Francesca turns to her loyal servant and thanks him for his timely arrival. She takes a scroll from Graciano, her expression serious as she prepares to resolve the situation. Graciano hands her a small blade along with the paper, and she prepares to use it. Without hesitation, Francesca pricks her own thumb with the knife, startling her servant. Graciano gasps as she presses her bleeding finger onto the document, cheerfully announcing that it is done. A stark, bloody thumbprint marks the paper, sealing her promise with her own blood. She turns back to the thieves and apologizes for handling them so roughly earlier. She advises them that risking the attention of the underworld is not worth the danger. Francesca implores them not to become scoundrels, even if their goal is to protect those they care about most. She looks down at the defeated men with a gentle, compassionate expression. Handing them the letter of introduction, she instructs them to go to the hospital on the map where treatment will be free. The thief stares at the paper in disbelief, unable to comprehend her generosity. She explains that the hospital owner has sworn to help anyone in the area suffering from poverty at no cost to them. A gentle smile graces her lips as she offers them a chance at salvation without crime. With her deed done, she turns on her heel to leave the stunned men behind. Suddenly realizing the time, she panics and dashes off, shouting apologies to Graciano because it is past her curfew. Graciano and the thief are left standing in the alley, baffled by her sudden shift in demeanor. Graciano watches her retreat and sighs, noting that she has fallen back into her bad habits. He muses aloud, wondering why she refuses to simply exercise the power she possesses. It is revealed that the Calvino family rules the country from the shadows, and she is the head's beloved daughter who knows the underworld inside out. Graciano watches her silhouette as she declares she has no intention of living in the underworld. Determined to change her fate, Francesca vows that she will not repeat the mistakes of her previous life. The looming facade of a grand building stands silent under the moonlight, establishing the setting for the unfolding drama. Leonardo gazes intently at Francesca, observing that she possesses a rather good-natured disposition despite her circumstances. A sharp, intrigued smile cuts across his face as he finds her behavior genuinely interesting. His silhouette blends into the darkness as he remarks that it will be quite a pleasure to play with her. The scene shifts to the city streets where he whispers into the night, addressing her as his dear fiancée. Back in the carriage, Graciano bandages Francesca's injured hand, noting the contradiction in her earlier words. Flustered, Francesca insists she truly wants to hide her identity, claiming she simply couldn't help herself back there. She argues that an ordinary lady wouldn't immediately assume a suspicious passerby was going to rob a bank, inadvertently revealing her keen instincts. The carriage rattles onward as she grapples with the lingering contradictions of her new life. Dressed in fine noble attire, she declares her intention to enjoy life as an ordinary noble daughter after transferring to the Royal Academy. Determined to break free from her past, she vows to finally live her life exactly how she pleases. Her mind drifts back to when she was 5 years old, the moment she remembered her past life from 12 years prior. The memory begins with the sound of a noisy television filling the room. Young Francesca screams at the noise to shut up, recalling that her parents died when she was very little. She explains that her dear grandfather took her in and raised her in their stead. Upon arriving home, a terrifying lineup of Yakuza subordinates bows deeply, shouting a thunderous welcome to the young miss and grandfather. Unfazed by the intimidation, the little girl beams and announces to everyone that she has returned. The men fawn over her, eagerly asking how her first day of kindergarten went. She excitedly tells them that tomorrow the class will draw pictures of their families, and she plans to draw every single one of them. The hardened men blush with emotion as she explains she asked the teacher for the biggest paper to fit her massive family. Her grandfather smiles proudly while his subordinates are moved to tears, overjoyed to be considered part of her family. A child's drawing titled "My Family" is taped to the wall, marking a turning point in her social life. The crayon drawing depicts a smiling girl surrounded by a legion of men in sunglasses, foreshadowing her isolation. The harsh reality sets in as she admits that she couldn't make any friends because of her background. At the playground, parents whisper fearfully that she is the granddaughter of the Kumiho crime family. A lonely Francesca walks past the swings as adults warn their children not to get too close to her. Her bodyguard loses his temper and yells at the civilians for excluding her, causing Francesca to panic and beg him to stop. She puts on a brave face, reassuring the bodyguard that she is okay and that the family staff will play with her instead. Trying to play alone in the sandbox, she realizes the futility of her situation. Defeated, she abandons the playground and decides to just go play at home. She reflects that her family environment was anything but normal. A flashback shows 5 burly men picking her up from school, illustrating that normal families don't send a squad for a child. She notes the absurdity of being thoroughly trained in self-defense yet still getting kidnapped despite the heavy security. Francesca returns home disheveled after beating up her own kidnappers, embarrassed that she had to save herself and walk home. She recalls finding dangerous weapons and a blood stamp hidden on the veranda during a game of hide-and-seek. Growing up, she learned her grandfather was a chivalrous crime boss who despised anything without honor. Though disliked by some peers, he commanded immense respect within the underworld. She remembers asking him about chivalry during her sophomore year of high school after hearing stories from a retired detective. Her grandfather dismisses the praise, telling her not to be ridiculous. He calls his admirers brown-nosers who make a big deal out of nothing, insisting it is none of their business. He looks at her with guilt, acknowledging that his actions are the reason she lives such a lonely life. Francesca tries to reassure him that she is having fun playing games alone on Christmas, masking the sadness of a solitary teenager. Standing in her high school uniform, she admits the truth to herself. She explains that the game she plays alone is actually very popular with her classmates right now. She had hoped that playing it might allow her to finally join in and play with the other students. The screen of her phone displays a heartbreaking notification: friend list empty. She weeps, wishing to be reborn into a normal life with friends, while telling her grandfather she loves him and doesn't want him to worry. The memory fades as a voice urgently calls out for her grandfather and the young miss. The Yakuza subordinates beam with pride, announcing that the food is perfect and they are ready for the Christmas party. Francesca asks if everyone pitched in, and they enthusiastically confirm they have been fired up since morning. One man proudly notes he used her favorite seasoning, while another boasts about researching chicken dishes for the occasion. Francesca sits on the porch with her grandfather as the air turns cold, suggesting they eat ice cream under the kotatsu. The peace is shattered as an intruder screams for them to freeze, cursing violently. In a blur of motion, a figure dives to shield the young girl from the sudden threat. Her grandfather gasps in shock at the intrusion while Francesca freezes in terror. The assailant moves with lethal speed, gun cocked and ready to fire as chaos erupts. Blood spatters across the scene as Francesca reaches out desperately toward her grandfather. A scream tears from her throat as she watches the violence unfold before her eyes. Her vision blurs as voices call out to the young miss in the chaos. A burning pain spreads through her stomach as someone frantically yells for a doctor. Gasping for air, she realizes she cannot breathe and calls out weakly to her grandfather. As her life fades, she hears a relieved voice glad that she is okay, her consciousness slipping away. Francesca jolts awake in a luxurious bed, gasping for breath as the nightmare of her past death ends. Servants rush into the room in a panic, shouting to call the master because the young miss is in distress. She realizes she has been reborn as Francesca in the Calvino house, a place where kidnapping attempts are a daily occurrence. Clutching her chest, she comes to the terrifying realization of exactly where this world is. It is the world of the app game she was playing right before she died in her previous life. She recalls the game mechanics where players level up characters and wield guns in a train-less Western-style setting. Determined to confirm her suspicion, she climbs out of the massive bed. She approaches the large mirror to examine her new appearance. A young girl with a stunned expression stares back at her from the glass. She observes her red hair and pale blue eyes, noting she is surprisingly beautiful for a 5-year-old. She recognizes herself as Francesca Emilia Calvino, the heroine from the game's illustrations. The game's lore floods back, describing a monarchy supported by 5 aristocratic families who control the underworld. She realizes the fundamental problem lies in Francesca's specific situation. Born into a powerful crime family, she knows everyone around her, including the love interests, is a criminal. Despair washes over her as she concludes she will never make friends and is doomed to repeat her lonely fate. She laments that she was determined to make friends and live a normal, peaceful life this time around. A heavy sigh escapes her lips as the weight of her reality settles in. Refusing to give up, she silently screams that she wants friends and cannot let this isolation happen again. Tears stream down her face as the trauma of her past and fear of the future collide. She recalls the plot starts when she turns 17 and is forced into an underworld war by her unseen fiancé Leonardo. Reasoning that a kidnapping triggered her memories, she notes she was isolated until 17 to prevent abductions. Because the game's Francesca grew up isolated from the underworld, she was helpless when caught in its affairs. She identifies that her only asset is a specific, unique skill. In the game, this skill is used to support other characters so they can solve the problems instead. Francesca clenches her fist, declaring that she hates leaving things to others. Holding a revolver, she resolves to gain the power to handle things herself since she cannot avoid the mess. She remembers the advice to become someone who can take responsibility for their own fate. With a determined smile, she agrees with her grandfather's past wisdom. She clasps her hands together, finding strength in her memories. A vision of her Yakuza family stands behind her, offering silent support from beyond. She gazes out the window, wondering how her family felt after she died. Her grandfather's voice echoes in her mind, telling her she can leave if things ever get too hard. She sees her past self smiling, wishing for her to grow up happy this time. Overcome with emotion, she buries her face in the sheets and apologizes for dying. Francesca grips the fabric of her dress, her heart squeezing with emotion as she stares into the mirror. She thinks of her grandfather, wishing her words could reach him to apologize for her untimely death in her past life. Overcome with grief, she stifles a sob, the weight of her past loss pressing down on her chest. Wiping her tears, she vows never to forget her grandfather and the love he gave her. She resolves that the only thing she can do now is honor his memory by living happily. Determined to change her fate, she swears to make friends and live a peaceful, ordinary life this time around. The carriage wheels rattle over the cobblestones as she returns to her reality. The driver announces their arrival at the mansion, signaling the end of her journey. A footman helps Francesca step out of the carriage as she arrives back at the Calvino estate. She whispers to herself, reaffirming her goal of achieving a normal life despite her surroundings. 2 lines of servants bow deeply, shouting a thunderous welcome to the young miss. Her father stands before the servants and asks if she had any trouble on her way back. Francesca nervously denies any trouble, though internally she notes that the real trouble is just beginning. She notices her father is stepping on a man named Chicane and hesitantly asks why he is doing that. Her father coldly replies that the man has committed a very grave sin. He looks down at his subordinate with icy contempt, judging him for his failure. He explains that while putting her clothes away, the man was shot in the stomach and stained her uniform with blood. Francesca stands frozen in shock, horrified by the extreme violence over a simple uniform. The servants tremble in fear, unable to look up as the tension in the room spikes. The bleeding man on the floor begs the young miss for forgiveness. He laments that no matter how much he apologizes, there is no redemption for getting his dirty blood on her precious uniform. He continues to grovel in a pool of his own blood, terrified of the retribution for ruining her clothing. Her father assures her to rest easy, promising that he will take care of the matter personally. With a ruthless glare, he tells the subordinate to apologize with his death for ruining Francesca's school life. Francesca intervenes, causing her father to pause and ask what is the matter. She frantically orders someone to call a healer immediately, screaming that she doesn't care about the uniform. Standing there, she realizes with sinking despair that she has already failed in her quest for normalcy. She reflects that to live an ordinary life, she needed to understand her family, but her father is clearly insane. She accepts the grim reality that she has been fully recognized as a member of the Underworld. Her father, who was supposed to be cold and indifferent according to the game, dotes on her with a terrifying expressionless face. To make matters worse, the staff treats her as the revered heir of the Calvino family. She panics, realizing that next week marks the beginning of the main story, but decides she can't worry about that yet. The game's plot begins with her getting kidnapped by her villainous fiancé, a fate she is desperate to avoid. Jumping forward to a busy day in town, Francesca walks through the streets in a disguised outfit. She sits at a cafe terrace, trying to blend in with the bustling crowd of the city. She contemplates the setting, noting that the country is rich and prosperous due to the royal family and the 5 underworld families. Her thoughts turn to Leonardo, her fiancé, and the young head of the Aldini family, who is the game's biggest villain. She recalls that Leonardo was an unobtainable enemy character, a powerful man who charmed people for his own purposes. A dark vision plays out in her mind where Leonardo finds her collapsed on the floor and asks what happened. In the vision, he lifts her chin and warns that if she keeps this up, she will destroy something very important. He laughs darkly, claiming that the look of despair on her face is exactly what he wanted to see. He taunts her, asking if she hates him, and ominously predicts she won't hate him for much longer. Francesca seethes with rage at the memory of the character, vowing to kill him herself one day. Snapping back to reality, she decides she must do whatever it takes to avoid meeting him entirely. She walks nervously through the market, hoping to stay under the radar. Passers-by chat idly as she navigates the crowd, on edge and alert. Francesca clasps her hands together in prayer, desperate to avoid the start of the game's tragic storyline. Suddenly, a carriage pulls up right next to her, signaling that fate might have found her despite her efforts. Francesca adjusts her disguise, noting with a sharp gaze that someone has been watching her since she left the villa. She maintains her composure, confirming that the surveillance has been constant and unrelenting. Acknowledging her family's dangerous status, she reflects that she normally wouldn't be allowed to walk freely without an escort. However, she dismisses the threat, deciding she no longer needs to worry about who they are waiting for. With her move to the academy scheduled for tomorrow, she is ready to leave this restrictive life behind. She steels herself, knowing that today marks the true beginning of the 9 stories. A carriage door looms nearby as Francesca walks past, unaware of the sudden movement from the shadows. Pedestrians scream in horror as a carriage pulls up and Francesca is snatched off the street in broad daylight. The thugs watching from the shadows smirk, noting that everything is proceeding exactly according to the game scenario. Francesca realizes her memories were correct as the event scenario unfolds around her inside the carriage. A thug yells at her not to resist, confirming that the game's plot is playing out in reality. Analyzing the situation coolly, she deduces that these are merely hired thugs and Leonardo himself is absent. With a cold glare, she reaches for a concealed weapon, declaring she has no use for this specific episode. She strikes suddenly, shocking the thug as she makes her daring move to escape the moving carriage. Without hesitation, she leaps from the vehicle, tucking her body to roll safely onto the cobblestones. Francesca stands up and dusts herself off, letting out a breath of relief after her reckless escape. She cheerfully announces her intention to go home, leaving the bystanders completely dumbfounded by her sudden appearance. Celebrating her survival of the game scenario, she lists all the things she wants to do now that the mission is complete. Originally a ploy by Leonardo to raise money for a conflict, Francesca resolves that avoiding him will solve all her problems. Her internal celebration is cut short as she suddenly realizes something is missing. She touches her head, realizing her hat blew away during the commotion of her escape. Quickly calculating the wind direction, she determines it is blowing south-southwest. She turns to look in that direction, her eyes scanning the street for her lost item. A voice calls out asking if she is looking for the hat, freezing Francesca in her tracks. She stares in horror as she sees a dark figure holding her hat, realizing her luck has just run out. Fear washes over her face as she looks up, trapped by the gaze of the one person she desperately wanted to avoid. The wind whips her hair around her face, emphasizing the palpable tension of the encounter. Leonardo smiles dangerously, holding her close in an embrace she never consented to. She panics internally, shocked that she didn't even notice anyone getting closer until it was too late. He whispers possessively into her ear, claiming her as his own Francesca. She describes his mesmerizing golden eyes like a full moon and jet black hair that seems to suck you in. Her mind screams the identity of the man before her, recognizing him as her ultimate enemy Leonardo. He casually returns her hat, advising her to hold onto it with a knowing smirk. Francesca is too stunned to speak, her face pale with shock as realization sets in. Suddenly, he sweeps her up onto his horse and gallops away, eliciting a scream of terror from her. Leonardo laughs at her struggles, calling her energetic as she frantically begs him to wait. He remarks with chilling satisfaction that he finally feels like he is dealing with a truly living person. Francesca lets out a small squeak of pure terror at his unsettling words. Internally she screams that he is terrifying, contrasting his bright expression with his ominous words. The horse carries them further away as her screams fade into the distance. The scene blurs with speed as she is forcefully whisked away, sealing her fate despite her efforts to escape. The carriage comes to a halt in front of a grand, imposing mansion under the bright sky. Exhausted from the journey, Francesca slumps on the horse while her captor stands beside her. Leonardo offers his hand to her with a gentlemanly gesture, inviting her to dismount. Francesca hesitates, staring at his hand with a mixture of suspicion and anxiety. Seeing her pause, Leonardo teasingly asks if she plans to escape, noting that the sudden abduction must have frightened her. He drops the pleasantries and suggests they get straight to the point of their meeting. With a confident smile, he formally introduces himself as Lord Leonardo Valentino Aldini. The heavy iron gates swing open as he welcomes Francesca into his territory. He proposes they get to know each other, marking this as their first meeting as an engaged couple. Francesca recoils internally, thinking she would really rather not engage with him at all. She reflects on his status as the young head of the powerful Aldini family. Like her, he lost his father and older brother at a young age and inherited his position at 10 years old. Despite his youth, he possessed all the necessary talents to survive in the ruthless underworld. He is known as a cold-hearted man with a clear head and fearless heart who relies on no one but himself. As the Aldini head, he has single-handedly ruled over all the adults in his family. Francesca grimly acknowledges the reality that she is this dangerous man's fiancée. Leonardo interrupts her thoughts, signaling a shift in the conversation. Francesca nervously wonders if this house is his hideout, recalling that in the game she was taken to a warehouse. He remarks that normally, kidnapped victims scream and cry out for help. Laughing at her silence, he questions if a kidnapper should really be asking their victim that. He claims he can gauge a kidnapper's killing intent, to which Francesca replies she is simply used to being kidnapped. Leonardo mentions there was something specific he wanted to discuss if they ever met. Francesca cuts straight to the chase, declaring she wants to break off their engagement. Leonardo finds her statement amusing, noting the irony of calling their advantageous marriage a selfish promise. She agrees, recalling the binding oath their grandfathers made years ago. The oath stipulated that when both families had children of similar ages, they would be wed. She explains that her family, closely tied to royalty and valuing loyalty, cannot make money by caring for others. In contrast, Leonardo's family values strength and generates enormous profits through military might. Despite their wealth, the Aldini family is looked down upon for having the shortest history of the 5 families. Their grandfathers believed uniting her noble bloodline with his wealth would be mutually beneficial. Leonardo challenges her, asking if she truly sees no advantage to the union. A close-up of his shoe implies him stepping closer or shifting his stance. His expression turns cold and unreadable, revealing the darkness beneath his charm. Francesca analyzes him, realizing his feelings are far more rational and pragmatic than honorable. She insists on breaking the engagement, convinced that neither of them genuinely wants this union. Leonardo's face is shadowed, his smile fading into something more ominous. The sound of his footsteps echoes as he aggressively closes the distance between them. He flatly rejects her proposal, stating clearly that he does not think they should break it off. He clarifies that breaking the engagement is not the topic he brought her here to discuss. Grabbing her chin, he declares he is going to really hurt her from this point forward. He explains that when she returns home, she must appear to have suffered greatly. He asks her to tell her father exactly how hard her captivity was. He wants to create a tragic atmosphere and admits he would be happy if she cried. He reasons that the other families will surely sympathize with her when they see her in so much pain. Francesca stares at him, a realization dawning on her about the man before her. She realizes he has intentionally killed his own reputation with his own hands to execute this plan. Leonardo states that playing the victim is the extent of the role he wants her to play. He refuses to break the engagement, declaring that she is still far too useful to him. Leonardo leans in close, explaining that his warning is entirely for her own benefit. He smiles darkly, suggesting it would actually be better if she resisted as much as possible since he has no need for a good girl. Francesca glares at him, thinking resolutely that his intimidation tactics will not work on her. Leonardo correctly deduces that her willingness to be hurt is the first step in a plan to topple the balance of the 5 families. As she clutches her own throat, he coldly informs her that her plan is destined to fail. Francesca retorts that she refuses to run home crying to her father, no matter what he does to her. She vows with absolute conviction that she will never rely on someone else to fight her battles. Her eyes burn with determination as she asserts she needs no one to exact revenge for her. She recites her personal creed, insisting that one must take full responsibility for whatever happens to oneself. This philosophy is the core of her righteousness, a lesson drilled into her by her grandfather. She declares she will achieve vengeance with her own 2 hands when the time is right. Leonardo gazes at her with widened eyes, genuinely intrigued by the fire in her expression. Breaking into laughter, he praises her dignity and courage, calling her absolutely amazing. He smirks, realizing that breaking her heart will not be the simple task he anticipated. Francesca stares him down, her resolve unshaken by his amusement. Leonardo produces a large revolver from his jacket, holding it with practiced ease. The mechanical click of the hammer cocking echoes through the tense room as he prepares the weapon. He offers the gun handle first to Francesca, inviting her to pull the trigger if she has the nerve. He taunts her with a choice, warning that he will hurt her repeatedly unless she kills him now to secure a peaceful life. He questions what the only daughter of the Calvino family will choose to do in this moment. Mocking her heritage, he asks if the daughter of a crime family is actually afraid of committing a little murder. He tells her not to be foolish, but she cuts him off with a sharp retort before he can finish. Without hesitation, Francesca raises the weapon and presses the muzzle directly against her own temple. She pulls the trigger with a loud click, shocking Leonardo as she gambles her life on a hunch. Leonardo stares at her in wide-eyed astonishment, murmuring that she is truly amazing. Francesca calmly explains she knew it was a fake because the light metal is only meant for show. She admits she grew to hate guns in her previous life because she saw them far too often. A flashback reveals her identifying a model gun intended for a festival, surprising her subordinates. In the memory, she forcefully confiscates the weapon while her men panic and insist it is real. She lectures them on the law, pointing out that model guns made of metal cannot be black. To prove her point, she sticks a magnet to the gun, demonstrating the material difference to her stunned guards. Back in the present, Francesca scolds Leonardo for making such a dangerous bet at a time like this. She advises him that the next time he threatens someone, he should not let them touch the weapon. Holding her hand out, she challenges him to admit whether the threat was real or fake. Leonardo bursts into uncontrollable laughter, completely disarmed by her audacity. Covering his face, he confesses that he really likes her and calls her his adorable fiancée. He decides it would be a pity to throw her away after witnessing such spirit. With a twisted smile, he declares that is exactly why he will not break off their engagement. Francesca freezes with a look of pure horror as she realizes her plan has backfired completely. She yells at him for laughing and calls him scary, realizing he intends to use her for something terrible. Leonardo smiles darkly, amused by the fact that she can speak to him so brazenly while he holds a gun. He swings the revolver violently, remarking that her defiance is also really cute. He hurls the gun toward the window, shattering the glass where an eavesdropper was hiding. He calls out to the spy, asking if they don't think peeping is trashy behavior. Leonardo glances back at Francesca, noting that he has no desire to flaunt their first meeting to an audience. He lectures her, stating that political marriages are their duty as nobility of the underworld. He points out that if she broke it off unilaterally, he would just use it as an excuse to do something nasty. Leonardo beams with a bright, terrifying smile, claiming she understands him perfectly even though they just met. Leonardo smiles darkly, asking why his wise fiancée would want to give up all the benefits of marrying him. He questions if she intends to marry someone from another family instead, implying betrayal. Francesca flinches, realizing with horror the implication of his words. She deduces that if the Calvinos team up with another family, they could destroy Leonardo's house. Panicking, she quickly denies his assumption, internally screaming that is definitely not her intention. She yells that she doesn't want to marry anyone from any family because she simply wants a normal life. She explains that marrying a man from the underworld makes a peaceful life impossible. Her voice trembles as she declares her desire for a normal life with peaceful days. Trembling with emotion, she finally admits her true goal, to finally make some friends. She reasons that a gangster's wife must handle dangerous behind-the-scenes work and act as a surrogate in emergencies. Determined to avoid the game's tragic plot, she lists her minimum requirements for a peaceful life. Her list includes avoiding the game's opponents, annulling the engagement, and staying out of Leonardo's affairs. Leonardo observes her with amusement, summarizing that she simply wants to live on the surface world. His expression hardens as he tells her that no matter how she looks at it, the marrow of her bones belongs to a servant of the underworld. Francesca is shocked by his visceral metaphor about her very nature. He assures her he is serious, though he notes she clearly doesn't believe him. Abruptly ending the conversation, he says he is upset and wants to see her again, promising to pick her up later. He walks her to the door, bidding her a simple goodbye as she leaves. Francesca sighs, muttering that it is his loss if he marries her because she has absolutely no skills. Leonardo watches her go, noting that having no skills is rare for someone of noble blood in the game world. The game lore explains that higher noble status correlates with more skills, making commoners skillless. In this world, rarity translates directly to the preciousness of blood and magical potential. Characters with the highest rarity of 5 have a third skill, while levels 1 and 2 have none. Francesca recalls a rumor that Leonardo will become a level 5 character after the 9 stories are completed. She feels a pang of sadness, remembering how she couldn't join the conversation about his skills in her past life. Her father told her not to worry, but she knows her lack of awakening at age 10 is significant. Leonardo considers his position as head of the family, emphasizing the importance of lineage. He points out that if she marries him, his deficiency might be inherited by their heirs. Ignoring his serious musing, Francesca waves a cheerful goodbye, unbothered by his concerns. The heavy doors slam shut, leaving Leonardo alone in the room to contemplate her departure. Francesca smiles brightly outside, eager to hurry home now that she is finally free. Leonardo whispers to himself that Francesca is really cute, his interest in her only deepening. Darkness shrouds the Calvino estate as the story returns to the mansion's quiet exterior. Francesca pumps her fist in triumph, shouting, "Hooray!" with a beaming smile. She explains that the Francesca's kidnapping scenario is actually just the game's tutorial and prologue, where she takes no real damage. The event is scripted to introduce a male character who heroically appears to save her. In the game, this is the moment the player chooses one of 4 families and spins for a character. The spin grants a random member with a rarity level of 4 or higher who becomes the tutorial savior. Essentially, it is a compulsory event designed to force the protagonist into contact with a character from another family. Francesca celebrates avoiding the tutorial entirely without having to make contact with anyone. A sudden realization wipes the smile from her face as she senses a critical oversight. The acceptance letter states she transfers into the same class as her rescuer, meaning she isn't in the usual 4 classes but an unknown 5th. Her plan to avoid selecting a family backfired completely because Leonardo's intervention technically confirmed the kidnapping event. She awkwardly thanks Leonardo for grabbing her, realizing his help has sealed her fate. In a flashback to 7 years ago, Leonardo reveals to Francesca that he actually possesses a skill, a fact he has hidden. He holds her hands and vows to do whatever it takes to keep her skill hidden from the world. Francesca insists that only he and her father can ever know about this secret. Leonardo warns her gravely that the whole world will want to kidnap her if the truth gets out. Back in the present, she resolves to hide her identity as Calvino's daughter to avoid the other family's heirs. She recalls Leonardo's parting words about wanting to see her again, which linger in her mind. She reassures herself with the game canon that Leonardo is exempt from attending class due to his grades, hoping she won't meet him. With nervous anticipation, she prepares for her first day at the academy tomorrow. Remembering advice to speak comfortably, she steels herself to make a good introduction. She smiles, recalling the instruction to listen politely to others in return. Hope swells in her chest as she wonders if this fresh start will finally allow her to make friends. The teacher introduces her to the class as the new transfer student, Francesca Emilia Trovato. She is presented as an exchange student from a neighboring country's Count family. A familiar voice cuts through the classroom with a casual, "Good morning." Leonardo rests his chin on his hand, smirking as he publicly greets his dear fiancé. The oblivious teacher prompts Ms. Trovato to continue with her self-introduction. Trembling with shock, she barely manages to stammer out her name. She walks down the aisle to her seat, passing whispering students while trying to maintain composure. She drops into her chair, freezing as she realizes exactly who she is sitting next to. Francesca screams internally, "Why?" as Leonardo smiles at her from the adjacent desk. He points out that she transferred into his class, confirming that her fate is sealed. The classroom erupts into chaos as students react to the rare presence of Lord Leonardo. Girls squeal and gossip, warning Francesca that she has no idea what he might do to her. Francesca despairs, realizing her transfer student cover has thrust her directly into the spotlight with him. Desperate to avoid trouble, she begs him to just stay away from her. Leonardo feigns ignorance, asking what she wants since she clearly came here for him. He cheerfully announces that he has something he needs to give back to her. He produces a folded cloth, holding it out with a mischievous smile. To her horror, he reveals it is the dress she was wearing and the ribbon she untied during her escape. Francesca stares at the items in blank, mortified silence. She jumps up and loudly comments on the weather to create a distraction before declaring she needs a walk. Leonardo immediately follows her into the hallway, ignoring her attempt to flee. She snaps at Mr. Aldini, warning him that his behavior is dangerous. He laughs off her anger, teasingly remarking that her crying face is also very cute. Francesca loses her temper, shouting, "You know what?" at his relentless teasing. She furiously explains that untying the ribbon was a calculated move to escape, not an invitation for him to return it. Leonardo snickers at her reaction, prompting a tearful Francesca to shout her thanks for returning the items despite her obvious distress. He laughs openly, admitting he doesn't understand her fury but finds it delightful, asking why she is thanking him with such anger. Leonardo offers a simple, direct apology to Francesca for his behavior. He suddenly grabs her hand, leaning in to whisper an apology for being so mean to his dear fiancé. Francesca coldly pulls her hand away, staring him down with dead eyes and telling him to save his apologies. Leonardo looks at her with a mix of amusement and confusion, letting out a puzzled sound. She sighs deeply, turning to face him in the corridor as she begins to explain her cold reaction. Francesca admits that as she walked away earlier, the reality of the situation finally clicked in her mind. In the game, there were only 4 classrooms to transfer into, but she was inexplicably assigned to a hidden 5th one. She recalls that Leonardo was supposed to be exempt from attending classes entirely due to his superior intellect. However, despite his exemption, his name still had to remain nominally on one of the class rosters. Since she avoided the tutorial selection, the game logic assigned her to the only class not shown in the playable scenario. Leonardo interrupts her train of thought, pointing out that she deliberately introduced herself using the surname Trovato instead of Calvino. Francesca confirms it is her late mother's name, questioning if he intends to hide his own family identity. He remarks on the immense effort she went to just to create this cover, catching her off guard with his observation. He coldly deconstructs her plan, arguing that if she truly wanted peace, she should have fled the country rather than attending the academy in the capital. Francesca stares back at him, the realization striking her that he is the very source of her predatory fate. He stands silently in the hallway, looking at her with an innocent expression that belies his sharp words. Panic rises in her chest as she stammers out the accusation that he is the one destined to cause a major incident. His future schemes are destined to shake the foundations of the Royal Academy, the 5 families, and the entire capital city. Since she avoided the main story, she has no idea how it ends, only knowing that the protagonist usually solves things with her companions. Her voice drops as she reiterates her desperate wish to live a peaceful life completely detached from the narrative. Francesca stands in silence, her expression hardening as she contemplates the weight of her choices. A singular thought crosses her mind, marking a turning point in her internal monologue. She realizes that by twisting the plot for her own safety, she may have destroyed the happy ending that was supposed to occur. Determination fills her gaze as she resolves to take responsibility for involving innocent people in the villain's schemes. Leonardo calls out to her, warning that this academy is a dangerous place precisely because it is the setting of the game. He stands bathed in light, asking her directly and with a gentle smile if she hates him. Francesca looks up at him in surprise, murmuring his surname as the question hangs in the air. He laughs that she hasn't tried to impress him once, and she scolds him that this is absolutely not the time for laughter. He darkly suggests that she should just kill him if she wants to avoid the marriage, prompting an exhausted sigh from her. The atmosphere shifts as he prepares to deliver a definitive statement. Leonardo steps dangerously close, whispering that it is unlikely he will be able to grant even a single one of her wishes. He cups her cheek tenderly, his eyes intense as he commands her to burn that fact into her memory. Rain pours down on the confrontation as Graciano stands his ground against the two thugs. He raises his fists into a fighting stance, revealing that one of his hidden skills is about to be unleashed. His ability manifests as physical enhancement, a power that drastically boosts his combat capabilities. A heavy blow connects with brutal impact, sending shockwaves through the rain-soaked air. Graciano effortlessly batters one attacker while dodging a strike, the sheer force of his counter sending the man flying. The second thug panics and draws a gun, firing wildly at the young butler as Francesca watches in horror. Graciano curses the damn kid under his breath, unimpressed by the lethal weapon pointed at him. His skill magnifies his attack, defense, and speed, allowing him to close the distance instantly. Moving fast enough to dodge bullets with his bare hands, he becomes a blur of motion that the gunman cannot track. His overwhelming strength allows him to tank heavy hits without flinching as he dominates the fight. A final, thunderous impact echoes through the trees as the remaining thug is launched into the foliage. Silence returns to the clearing as Graciano stands over the unconscious men, declaring to his mistress that it is over. Francesca asks if he is hurt, recalling that despite his role as an attendant, he possesses noble blood and a rare level 5 ranking. Graciano shrugs off her gratitude, remarking that nobodies like these thugs are a piece of cake for him. He clenches his fist, simply expressing his relief that Francesca remained unharmed during the ambush. An awkward silence falls between them under the umbrella as the adrenaline of the battle fades. Smiling sheepishly, he admits that having her worry about him isn't the worst feeling in the world. Francesca immediately retorts that of course she was worried about his safety. She delivers a crushing blow to his romantic hopes by declaring that he is her precious little brother. Graciano stumbles in shock, the label of brother hitting him harder than any punch from the thugs. Recovering, he refuses to let her ride with the captive thugs, suggesting they walk home instead so he can buy crepes. Francesca happily agrees to split the cost, thanking him for the treat as they walk together. As she looks at his profile, she reflects on the fact that Graciano has been her childhood friend for years. However, she remembers that their relationship was fraught with tension right from the very beginning. In a flashback to when she was 7 and he was 6, a young Graciano coldly warns her to stay away from him. The household staff gossip that the boy was caught stealing in another family's territory multiple times. Battered and wrapped in a blanket, the young Graciano sits in silence after her father took him into custody following a severe punishment. Young Francesca approaches the injured boy gently, introducing herself and stating her age. He glares up at her with sharp, distrustful eyes that seem too old for his young face. Francesca looks at him with pity, knowing exactly why he behaves this way due to her knowledge of the game. In the original game, a specific episode reveals his tragic backstory after the player bonds with him. His mother was a prostitute who died when he was 4, leaving him to survive alone in the slums by eating whatever he could find. While scavenging through trash, he was eventually found by Marquis Savini, Francesca's father. The Marquis reveals the boy is his son, born from a star-crossed affair that transcended social class. Young Graciano tries to run away, insisting he didn't come for food, money, or rescue. Tears stream down his face as he admits he only wanted to deliver his mother's dying message to him. He calls out, "Dad," to the retreating back of the Marquis, desperate for acknowledgement. The Marquis turns back, stunned by the revelation from the boy he unknowingly fathered. The flashback shifts to Graciano behind bars, looking small and terrified as he whispers for help. Harsh voices call him a dirty brat and demand someone remove him from the premises. He is shown running for his life, escaping persecution and rejection. Francesca narrates that he was captured and severely punished by a rival family before fleeing in desperation. Back in the room, when Francesca reaches out a hand to him, his body violently flinches in fear. It breaks her heart to realize he is so accustomed to being beaten that his body reacts reflexively to any movement. Tears well up in her eyes as the reality of his suffering sinks in. She cries for the tragic reality that he was still just a little boy enduring such pain. Realizing he isn't just a video game character but a real person, she hugs him and promises he never has to be afraid again. She weeps openly, vowing to feed him, keep him warm, and protect him alongside her family. Francesca recalls the memory of Graciano crying, noting it was the first and only time she ever witnessed her stoic attendant in tears. In the game, Graciano was known for his cold demeanor and foul mouth, but Francesca finds a different side to him as she buys them crepes. Graciano takes a bite of the crepe, his eyes lighting up with genuine surprise as he exclaims how tasty it is. He admits with a small smile that having something sweet every once in a while isn't so bad. Francesca smiles warmly, realizing that their relationship has evolved far beyond the distant dynamic depicted in the original game. However, a shadow crosses her mind as she acknowledges that her actions have fundamentally altered the timeline. She reflects on the history of the 5 families, recalling a time when there were actually 6 before Leonardo's influence took hold. Francesca realizes she never accounted for how her changes might impact Leonardo's behavior, which is deeply rooted in his traumatic past. She envisions the graveyard where a 10-year-old Leonardo knelt, the sole survivor of an abduction that claimed his father and brother. The official story claims he survived a rival family's attack to become the young head of the Aldini house. The terrifying truth is that the young Leonardo orchestrated the entire abduction himself to eliminate his own father and brother. He ruthlessly purged the 6th family to silence them, paving his blood-soaked path to becoming the Shadow King. Francesca recalls the game's release schedule, noting that only 5 of 7 chapters were out when she died, leaving Leonardo's full skill set a mystery. She worries that knowing his hidden skills might be the key to stopping him in the unknown future. Graciano interrupts her thoughts, casually mentioning that the skill of the game's strongest and worst enemy is surprisingly simple. He changes the subject, asking if she is indeed in the same class as the current head of the Aldini family. Francesca confirms it with a look of despair, admitting she lost all hope the moment she saw his face. Graciano pauses, suddenly remembering the crucial detail that Leonardo is actually her fiancé. Francesca frantically tries to hush him, desperate to keep her recent kidnapping a secret from him. Graciano warns her to be careful, noting that rumors about Leonardo's dangerous nature are already circulating among the first years. She internally screams about needing to keep Leonardo's goal of upsetting the power balance a secret while Graciano offers a solution. He bluntly suggests she just tell her father if she wants to break the engagement, offering to kill Aldini himself if necessary. Francesca is horrified by her family's violent solutions but thanks him for the sentiment, insisting on an amicable dissolution instead. She weeps comically at her predicament, determined to proceed with a peaceful breakup to avoid the game's plot. Blushing, she realizes that the game's objective is to defeat Leonardo, which is the exact conflict she is trying so hard to avoid. She sighs deeply, resigning herself to the difficult path ahead. Determined to settle things, she decides to go to school early the next morning to convince Leonardo to break the engagement. The next morning, Graciano points out a bit of cream on her face as she heads off, reaffirming her desire for a peaceful life despite Leonardo's interest. The narrative shifts to the Royal Academy, standing majestic and imposing under the morning sky. Francesca marches into the classroom with a bright smile, ready to have a serious word with Mr. Aldini. Her confidence falters when she finds him face down on his desk, apparently asleep. She tentatively calls out to him, but he mutters a dark apology without lifting his head. He warns her that he is in a very bad mood, his voice dripping with menace. His hand twitches as he begins to rise, leaving Francesca confused by his hostile tone. Leonardo grabs her shoulder and pulls her close, glaring with terrifying intensity as he begs her to stay away. His eyes burn with murderous intent as he commands her to get out of his sight before he kills her. Francesca freezes in terror, staring blankly at the boy who has suddenly become a monster. She realizes with a jolt of fear that a strange event from the game has officially begun. Leonardo turns away, and Francesca accepts that this murderous aura is the real Leonardo she feared. She backs off, trembling as she recalls his true nature as a villain who tortures and kills without hesitation. Suddenly, Leonardo's demeanor shifts completely as he apologizes for ignoring her, leaving Francesca bowing in confusion. He returns to his nap as if nothing happened, leaving Francesca standing bewildered in the quiet classroom. Other students arrive, squealing with delight that Lord Leonardo is present for a second day in a row. The girls gush over how cool he looks even while sleeping, while Francesca sits nearby, visibly shaken. As the teacher begins the lesson, classmates whisper about Leonardo's perfect grades despite his absences, asking Francesca if she finds the danger exciting. The professor shouts at the sleeping boy to wake up, demanding attention for the class session. Leonardo sits up with a groggy, terrifying the teacher into stuttering that they should get started. A warning echoes in Francesca's mind, reminding her that she should never have gotten involved with the underworld. Classmates whisper about the Aldini family, judging them as vile people who make a living by committing crimes. A female student questions the rumor, wondering why someone from the dangerous underworld would let his guard down so easily. To everyone else in the room, it appears that Leonardo is simply taking a nap at his desk. Francesca observes him closely, realizing that despite his relaxed posture, Leonardo is not actually asleep. She senses that Leonardo is quietly waiting for something specific to happen. A girl gathers her courage and approaches the desk, calling out, Lord Aldini. Her friends interrupt, offering to guide Leonardo to the next classroom if he needs help. Another girl interjects, mentioning that her father wanted to arrange a betrothal between her and Leonardo. Leonardo remains silent, ignoring the chatter about fate and family connections swirling around him. He lets out a sharp, exasperated sigh that instantly freezes the girls in their tracks. Leonardo coldly demands that they shut up for a minute, his hostility stunning the group. Francesca gasps in the background, startled by the sudden aggression in Leonardo's voice. He turns his gaze directly to her and calls out, Miss Trovato, causing Francesca to flinch. Francesca stammers in confusion, asking, me? As Leonardo confirms he is speaking to her. Leonardo asks if they have music class next, verifying that he was aware of his schedule all along. He suggests they walk there together, reasoning that as a transfer student, she probably doesn't know the way. Francesca blushes, internally screaming with happiness that she gets to be in his care. She suddenly remembers her vow to avoid him and shouts, I'm sorry, before bowing frantically. Lying about forgetting to buy a notebook, Francesca dashes out of the room to escape the interaction. Leonardo watches her leave in silence as Francesca sprints down the hallway in a panic. Francesca laments that she missed a perfect opportunity to make a friend because of her fear of the plot. She pauses on the stairs, deducing that Leonardo is likely heading toward the courtyard. Worry washes over her face as she peers out the window to check on him. In the courtyard, Francesca spots Leonardo standing calmly while being encircled by a group of men. She realizes with horror that her prediction was correct. Leonardo is being targeted by assassins. 10 armed men surround him, knives drawn, ready to attack the lone student. The battle begins in a flash as Leonardo dodges the first strike with effortless grace. His eyes narrow with a dangerous intensity as the assassins press their attack. Leonardo weaves through the blades, his movements too fast for the attackers to track. Francesca watches from her hiding spot, stunned by how fast Leonardo is moving. Leonardo stops to stretch his arms, laughing that the movement feels nice. He remarks that it feels refreshing to finally stretch his muscles after sitting still for so long. With a confident smirk, Leonardo beckons the assassins to try again. The assassins curse the faculty's barrier skills, which limit the number of guns allowed inside the academy. Leonardo warns them that he doesn't have a choice and tells them to stay out of his way. He activates a skill, summoning a swirling mass of liquid energy in his hands. He sighs, admitting he was really looking forward to some hand-to-hand combat instead of using powers. Leonardo decides this confrontation will have to be a game of skill rather than a brawl. He unleashes the energy, the force of his power rippling through the air around him. An assassin lunges forward in desperation, screaming, Die, Aldini! Francesca screams, Aldini, from the window, terrified for his safety. Leonardo's eyes glow ominously as his ability takes hold of the target. The attacking assassin freezes mid-air, his body locking up completely. The man screams in confusion, unable to move a single muscle despite his efforts. Francesca gasps, instantly recognizing the specific nature of this terrifying power. She runs toward the scene, realizing this is the scripted event where the player is inevitably defeated by Leonardo. She watches in shock, knowing exactly why the player cannot win this specific battle. The cause of the defeat is revealed. One of Leonardo's skills is the ability to forcibly restrict a target's movement. Leonardo explains to the frozen assassin that every skill has a usage limit, revealing his weakness. He warns that the stronger a skill is, the longer the recharge time before it can be used again. Leonardo suddenly turns to address Francesca, acknowledging that she came despite his warnings. He coldly commands her to get the hell out of there, repeating his threat to kill her if she stays. Francesca refuses to leave, urging him to use that specific skill again immediately. Leonardo insists he can't due to the recharge limit, but Francesca shouts at him to just shut up and trust her. She desperately insists that he can use it again, surprising him with her conviction. Francesca spots a sniper in a third-floor window and screams a warning about the new threat. Leonardo reacts instantly, tackling Francesca just as a knife is thrown from above. The blade clatters to the ground where they were standing moments before. Leonardo holds Francesca close after saving her, breathing heavily from the close call. He admits that he wouldn't have noticed the attacker if she hadn't been watching from the window. He praises the assassin's cleverness in hiding their presence, realizing they must have used a stealth skill. Francesca smiles with relief, theorizing that the sniper was likely the last remaining assassin. Leonardo leans in close, his face dangerously near hers as the adrenaline fades. He asks her directly what she did to him just now. His eyes narrow with suspicion as he demands to know how she enabled him to use his skill again. Francesca freezes, realizing she may have revealed too much about her knowledge of his powers. The chapter ends on a cliffhanger with Leonardo interrogating her about her mysterious ability to bypass his limits. Francesca is left trapped in his arms, facing the scrutiny of the very villain she was trying to avoid. Two servants whisper about the master looking unusually tired, noting that His Majesty personally asked for him today. The older servant politely asks the master if he will be going to bed soon. Francesca cheerfully welcomes her papa home with a bright, happy smile. He greets her and immediately asks what is the matter, wondering if she cannot sleep. He urges her to tell him what is wrong, though she nervously claims it is nothing like that. In a flash, he threatens to mobilize the entire Calvino family to eliminate the source of her stress. Francesca explains she was just worried because he was late and her first day of school was shocking. He apologizes profusely for worrying her while she looks at him with confusion. He admits he is overcome with emotion, touched that she is happy to see him return. He asks if she was able to make friends, noting he heard she had a rough day at school. He regrets that he should have had his people infiltrate the school to protect her. He asks for the names of the students she would like to be friends with. He promises that by tomorrow, those students will be her best friends. Francesca shouts at him not to bribe her friends, but he claims he will only encourage them with money. He reminisces about singing her a lullaby called The Killer Next Door, which she remembers as very disturbing. A flashback begins with a servant asking if the crying young miss has calmed down. The master tells a young Graciano that he is part of the family now and will never have to worry again. He suggests the battered boy take a bath to clean up. Young Francesca points out he hasn't bathed yet and acknowledges he was treated for a serious injury. She observes that his hair is tangled and he is covered in mud. She bluntly adds that he smells a little. She lectures him that if he doesn't keep the wound clean, it will take longer to heal. She asks, "Really?" and confirms that is the reason for her concern. Beaming with excitement, she offers to come and help him clean it up. Graciano reacts with pure shock at the suggestion. He tries to stop her, but she insists the bathtub is very spacious and made specially for her. He insists he can clean up by himself, confusing her with his refusal. He bluntly states that he does not want her help. Francesca pouts in frustration at his rejection. She yells asking why he hates it so much, admitting she always dreamed of bathing with a sibling. Graciano stammers, asking her to look at him and saying he doesn't want her to see. She guesses he is worried about being seen in the bathtub. She imagines a Yakuza-style tattoo and claims it is completely wrong. Graciano is confused as she claims she is used to seeing that sort of thing. The servant calls for the young miss as Graciano tries to explain, but she runs off. Graciano sighs in defeat as she leaves. The servant comments that she finally gave up and is really a lady once she puts her mind to something. The servant thanks Graciano for his consideration towards her. Graciano looks away and says it is nothing. He thinks that if she had seen his body covered in scars like this, it would be bad. He is sure that that girl would cry again if she saw his scars. A voice explains that while his bones and organs were healed, there were too many other wounds. Healing them all would have taken a serious toll on his body. He acknowledges he has had his share of screw-ups and accidents. He remembers Francesca crying with big tears. He resolves that he has got to get better quickly. The older servant smiles warmly at him. The servant tells Graciano that he is a very kind boy. Graciano stays silent, looking embarrassed. He denies it, claiming he was just embarrassed to be seen. The author Sora Gudo introduces the story about a crime family daughter reincarnated in an Otome game. The author mentions character design, illustrations by Mage Anno, and encourages fan art. Keywords like gangsters and reincarnation appear, teasing a new character. Leonardo and Francesca stand together in the quiet aftermath of the battle outside the school building. He smiles gently, prompting her with a soft, to explain her earlier actions. Francesca trembles with nervousness, struggling to find the words to explain her intervention. She looks down, unable to meet his gaze as the weight of her secret presses on her. Finally, she confesses that she used a skill, stuttering through the admission. Leonardo's expression shifts to shock as he repeats her words, realizing she possesses a skill. Francesca admits she lied about having no skills and apologizes, causing Leonardo to chuckle. He bursts into laughter, asking why she is so nervous now and calling her funny. Francesca feels a wave of relief, thinking he might be willing to change the subject and let her off the hook. Her relief is shattered instantly as his gaze turns terrifyingly cold and he demands to know what. He asks precisely what she did to him, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Leaning in close, he warns her that he will not ask her again. Francesca surrenders to his intimidation, agreeing to tell him the truth with a defeated sigh. She explains that she lifted the usage limit on his skill because she thought the situation was dangerous. Leonardo presses further, astutely noting that lifting the limit wasn't the only thing she did. He reveals he intended to use a weakened version of his skill to interrogate the assassin. However, the man fainted despite his moderation, implying his power was forcibly amplified. He cups her chin, deducing that her skill strengthens the abilities of others. He concludes that lifting his usage limit was merely a side effect of that amplification ability. Francesca sweats nervously, realizing he has completely figured out the nature of her power. Leonardo marvels at her, admitting he didn't know it was possible for someone to possess such a skill. He explains that while practice improves utilization, raw skill strength is usually fixed from birth. He notes with awe that her ability allows her to meddle with a fundamental aspect of the world. He realizes that Francesca is the only person in the entire world with this unique power. Francesca confirms internally that all three of her skills are designed to nurture and strengthen others. She imagines a scenario where a commoner with a weak fire skill faces a noble. With her buff, the commoner's skill could be maximized to easily overcome the noble's inherent power. Her ability threatens the very foundation of their society, which relies on the idea that noble blood equals stronger skills. She knows she can permanently evolve skills and make them usable without limits, with effects that last forever. Terrified of the consequences, she resolves that she must keep this secret at all costs. If the nobility or foreign nations discovered her power, they would hunt her down to use her as a weapon. Leonardo turns away, and Francesca recalls that this power is exactly why he targets her in the original game. She panics, thinking the game's plot is happening anyway, but tries to reassure herself he only knows one skill. Leonardo mutters that this is really bad, his expression grave. Francesca asks why he revealed his own skill to her in the first place. She answers her own question, realizing he had to use it because the assassin was using a presence concealment skill. She explained she was concerned he wouldn't notice the attacker, confusing Leonardo with her concern. She reasoned that it was best for him to use the immobilization skill again since she didn't know if his other skills could block the attack. Leonardo sighs, looking at her with a complex expression as he processes her logic. He points out that if she hadn't helped him, she could have kept her secret safe. He notes that she prioritized his safety over the security of her own secret. He argues that if he had died, her engagement would be annulled and everything would have worked out for her. He asks why she risked herself to save him when leaving him to die would have solved her problems. Francesca declares firmly that there is nothing more important to her than human life. She admits she wanted to keep her secret, but not at the cost of his safety. She smiles gently, telling him she is just glad that he is okay. Leonardo observes that she has been on edge since the morning. He deduces that she must have known the assassins were planning to make a move. Aldini realizes she kept silent to protect him from danger, asking if that drove her earlier words. He teases her vivid imagination with a knowing look. Francesca insists she isn't wrong, confused by his reaction. She argues he hides his status as the Aldini head to ensure no one fears or avoids him. Because of his protective secrecy, she concludes he must be a deeply kind person. Aldini stares at her in stunned silence. He calls her dangerously naive for an Underworld native, amazed she has survived this long. A gentle, almost amused smile softens his features. He calls her his strong fiancée. He adds that she is beautiful, naming her Francesca. They stand together in the school courtyard, the moment heavy between them. Francesca touches her cheek, flustered by his sudden praise. Her eyes widen in sudden shock. He chides her for being too careless. He warns that all her efforts are about to go to waste. Promising to keep her secret, he demands punishment for leaving herself so vulnerable. Pulling her into an embrace, he warns he will ask her to do something she dislikes. Terrified by his smile, she stammers and asks if he is threatening her. Leaning in close, he makes his demand clear even within the school walls. He commands her to call him properly by his name. Francesca trembles in his arms, overwhelmed. She screams his name, despairing that she only wanted to break off the engagement. Flustered and defeated, she shouts Leonardo's name. Shifting scenes, Leonardo asks what she wants while telling her to calm down. She complains she cannot focus on her studies because he keeps staring at her. He finds her cold treatment cute, but she just demands he leave. Ignoring her, he begins complimenting her rose-red hair. He praises her pale blue eyes and long eyelashes while she fumes at his unfair handsomeness. A month has passed since she transferred to the academy. She remains friendless, isolating herself during breaks to avoid being seen with him. Leonardo notices her sigh, but she worries the female students will hate her if seen with him. He bluntly states there is no girl in the world more important to him than her. She questions his daily presence, but he sees no issue with it. Scolding him for skipping and sleeping, she urges him to start studying. She admits she is studying hard because her last test scores made her nervous. Leonardo reassures her not to be ashamed, calling her brilliant. She recalls her father threatening to blame the school if they hinder her excellence. Her father's voice echoes in her memory, calling the school awful. Terrified, she remembers his vow to destroy the institution without hesitation. Realizing the student's fate rests on her grades, she insists Leonardo study the difficult material too. Leonardo leans in close, pointing out that she is close but wrong. He corrects her, explaining she should use the formula from 4 questions ago. Impressed by his skill, she listens as he teases her for falling for trick questions. She begins to thank him for the help. Students search for Leonardo nearby, but he silences Francesca before they are found. He holds her close to keep them hidden, though she sarcastically notes his consideration. Francesca despairs that it has been a month and she is still friendless because of him. The narration notes she is leveling up her rescuer through mini-games before the official game story begins. Francesca confidently reasons she is safe from conspiracies because she avoided main characters in the tutorial and hasn't trained anyone up. She assures herself she hasn't developed bonds with other families either. Leonardo interrupts her thoughts by calling her name, prompting her to mentally celebrate that avoiding him is going smoothly. He teases that if she intends to ignore him, she should at least let him look at her cute face. Panic sets in as she realizes he is a 5 families member in her class whom she accidentally leveled up during the kidnapping. A horrifying realization strikes her speechless. She questions if she accidentally obtained Leonardo and has been cultivating him all this time. Leonardo laughs at her reaction, noting with amusement that she is suddenly trembling. Desperate to escape the situation, Francesca claims she just remembered she has business with Graciano. She lies that Graciano is her attendant, but Leonardo reminds her such statements are prohibited and that Graciano is actually his family member. Caught in her lie and overwhelmed, she abruptly announces she is leaving. Leonardo chuckles that it feels nice to have her rely on him while she quickly thanks him for his help. He watches her retreat, offering his assistance anytime she needs it. Francesca panics as she realizes the game is finally progressing and she doesn't know what to do. She reflects that it was strange Leonardo made contact with her in the first place. According to the plot, she isn't supposed to meet him until the 5th chapter, not during the tutorial. She recalls that Chapter 1 begins a month after school starts, involving the character she is meant to be most involved with. A sharp sensation cuts through her thoughts, causing her to freeze in place. She stops abruptly in the hallway, alerted by a sudden presence. Francesca stiffens, her eyes widening in fear as the sound of footsteps approaches. She clutches her chest, overwhelmed by an ominous feeling that grips her heart. A shadow falls over her face as she recognizes the approaching figure. She identifies the threat immediately, Ricardo Serenova. He is the powerful successor to the Serenova family. Ricardo walks past her, his expression cold and sharp. He stops and glances back, his presence commanding and intense. He calls out to "You over there," causing Francesca to panic that he might recognize her face. Ricardo turns to face her, and she stammers a terrified response. Sweat pours down her face as she desperately wonders what she should do. She fears being exposed as the Calvino daughter in front of all the other students. Ricardo stares directly at her with cold, intimidating eyes. A stern voice calls out from behind, freezing Francesca in her tracks with a simple command. Ricardo stands tall behind her, pointing out coldly that her ribbon tie has come loose. Francesca blinks in confusion, her mind going blank as she processes the unexpected comment. Impatient with his silence, he demands to know if she heard him, prompting a bewildered noise from her lips. He reiterates clearly that the ribbon on her uniform is loose, his tone brooking no argument. He points directly at her chest to emphasize his point, leaving Francesca stunned by the gesture. Quoting that a disheveled appearance reflects a disheveled mind, he warns her to be careful as she hastily agrees. While she internally rejoices that he hasn't recognized her, he continues his lecture on how small negligences lead to big trouble. She snaps into a perfect posture, announcing firmly that she has fixed the issue. Ricardo scrutinizes her work, grudgingly granting her passing marks despite noting a centimeter difference in the ribbon lengths. Suddenly, he pivots his attention, shouting authoritatively at a group of male students nearby. He berates them for undoing their top buttons against school rules, sending the terrified students into a panic. This is Ricardo Stefano Serenova, the only son of a family that values tradition above all else. Though he appears to be a strict honor student who is hard on himself and others, Francesca knows the truth lies deeper. Her sharp eyes catch the double seams on his vest, revealing a hidden layer of protection. She deduces the vest is bulletproof and spots hidden knives, confirming his gear is far from that of a normal student. While the 5 families have ironclad rules he strictly follows, Francesca senses a deeper complexity to his actions. She suspects he is already involved in the Iron Law case, marking the beginning of the game's first chapter. While other girls squeal for his attention, Francesca despairs over her bad luck in encountering him here. Just as she tries to slip away unnoticed, Ricardo turns his gaze back toward her. She attempts to flee while she still can, but his commanding voice orders her to wait. He murmurs about her rosy red hair, forcing her to feign casualness as she nervously asks what he wants. He scrutinizes her sky-blue eyes and brand new uniform, piecing together her identity. He identifies her as the transfer student Aldini mentioned, locking onto her with a sharp gaze. Francesca freezes, her facade cracking under the weight of his recognition. Forcing a smile, she hesitantly asks what his connection to Aldini has to do with her. Ricardo reveals that Leonardo cornered him last month with a specific message regarding her. He repeats Leonardo's possessive warning to stay away from Francesca. He relays the decree that no other family may touch her because she belongs solely to Aldini. As Francesca internally screams at Leonardo's idiocy, Ricardo adds that he was threatened with death if he disobeyed. Flustered and panicked, she holds her head and shouts that she wasn't told about any of this. Ricardo ignores her panic, asking with deadly seriousness if she wants to be rid of Aldini. He reminds her that she knows exactly what kind of families he and Leonardo come from and the danger they represent. He challenges her, asking if she truly desires to remain bound to a man like Aldini. While she wonders if he suspects a romance, Ricardo notes he has never seen Leonardo provoke another family so blatantly for a woman. He cites the Underworld law forbidding harm to uninvolved civilians, asserting that rules must be upheld. Predicting Leonardo will soon break the Iron Law, he echoes the same warning her grandfather once gave her about civilians. He issues a stern warning, standing tall over her as the gravity of the situation sinks in. He describes Aldini as a cruel anomaly even among criminals, though Francesca is already painfully aware of this fact. Vowing not to let an innocent be dragged to their doom, he declares his intention to intervene. He posits that if she is indeed trapped in Aldini's clutches, he will not stand idly by. He proclaims it his duty to honor the iron law and liberate her from Leonardo's grasp. He demands she confirm that Leonardo Valentino Aldini has harmed her so he can act. Upon her confirmation, he promises they will purge Leonardo completely. Francesca observes that despite his disciplined efforts to follow the Academy's rules, something lies beneath. She realizes there is something fundamentally different about him compared to others. A dark shadow casts over his face, confirming that he is not what he appears to be on the surface. Francesca stares back with intense focus, recognizing the danger standing right in front of her. Francesca politely declines his help, stating she is fine because she has her own resolve. She decides to clean up her own messes and put an end to the situation herself. She reflects on the possibility of civilians being used as an excuse to purge the Aldini family. Francesca questions whether such manipulative behavior is also prohibited by the Iron Law. Ricardo demands to know exactly what she understands about the Iron Law. He warns her to be more careful in the future, extending the caution to her actions as well. Francesca theorizes that upsetting the balance of the five families by purging the Aldinis might be part of Leonardo's plan. Ricardo stares at her intently, asking quietly if he is already too late to save her. When he accuses her of falling under Aldini's spell, she firmly denies any intention of losing herself to that man. She declares with absolute conviction that no matter what Leonardo does, she will never give in. Her resolve is absolute as she repeats that she will never submit. Stunned by her intensity, Ricardo demands to know her true identity. Francesca hesitates, caught off guard by the direct question about who she is. She tries to deflect, claiming she is just an ordinary citizen while looking away. Ricardo yells at her not to lie, finding it suspicious that she claims total ignorance of the underworld. He points out that surface dwellers usually change complexion when intimidated, confusing Francesca about whether they turn red or blue. Francesca is internally shocked to learn that surface people can apparently change their skin color at will. While Ricardo is baffled by the situation, Francesca mentally notes she needs to practice her reactions for next time. Graciano arrives at the worst possible moment, asking why he is there. He demands to know who the stranger is before recognizing him as the Serenova heir. Graciano orders the man to step away from the young miss immediately, his expression dark with protectiveness. Francesca frantically intervenes, lying that Ricardo merely stopped her from breaking school rules. She invents a story about her ribbon tie coming undone to explain the situation and avoid trouble. Ricardo tries to bring the conversation back to Aldini, but Francesca cuts him off desperately. Panic-stricken, she whispers to him to just play along with her fabrication. Graciano looks suspicious, while Francesca terrifies herself with thoughts of her father finding out she mixed with another family. She fears Graciano will report everything to her papa if she doesn't handle this perfectly. Ricardo awkwardly plays along, coughing and confirming he was indeed scolding the transfer student. Graciano misinterprets the situation entirely, accusing Ricardo of staring at the young Mrs. chest. Ricardo is outraged by the accusation of disrespect, asking if Graciano is out of his mind. While Francesca waves her hands in denial, Graciano offers to get rid of the pest for her. Graciano laments the loss of her peaceful academy life while Ricardo mutters that he would also like answers. Ricardo excuses himself, reiterating that it was a misunderstanding about the school's code of conduct. He notes that the lunch break is about to end as he prepares to leave. Advising her to be mindful of her uniform in the future, he politely excuses himself. He declares he will not associate with rule breakers as he walks away. Ricardo departs, leaving Francesca standing awkwardly with Graciano. Graciano checks on her, asking if she is really okay while she thanks him for his concern. He questions why a second-year Serenova was in the first-year building, suspecting they were fishing for information. Graciano asks if she means the drug that has been circulating in the capital recently. Francesca feigns partial ignorance, admitting she heard her father talking about it a little. Internally, she realizes this is the first chapter of the game and she already knows everything about the plot. She reflects on the drug epidemic spreading despite the Iron Law forbidding dealing in addictive substances. While lawbreakers are purged, the five families monitor each other to maintain the agreement since drug dealing is illegal anyway. The logic remains that if drugs are allowed for profit, someone will inevitably exploit the trade. The Serenova family acted first to protect the underworld and the country's people from the fiasco. Each of the 5 families has a flower crest symbolizing their house and an ideal dedicated to the royal family. The Calvino family is represented by a red rose symbolizing blood, sworn to be more loyal to the royal family than anyone else. The Aldini family bears a similar crest, but theirs is a black rose. It symbolizes the raw strength that the Aldini line values above all else. In contrast, the Serenova family uses white lilies to represent their purity. They value tradition supremely and show zero tolerance for rule breakers. This dedication to order is exactly why Ricardo is personally investigating the situation. He moves through the corridors, determined to uncover the truth behind the corruption. His goal is to identify which families are involved in the drug trade. Once found, he intends to dismantle them completely. In the original game story, Francesca investigates alongside him because she doesn't hide her identity now. Ricardo approaches her with a sharp intensity. He begins to call her Miss, but stops himself abruptly. A realization strikes him that he already knows the truth. He deduces who is pulling the strings behind the scenes. His mind races to connect the dots regarding the mastermind. He realizes the connection points directly to Francesca. Footsteps approach, interrupting his train of thought. Leonardo appears, causing Ricardo to question if he is the true mastermind. The atmosphere shifts instantly as the primary suspect arrives. Leonardo casually mentions hearing Ricardo was in the first year building. Francesca wonders if his information gathering is too good to be natural. She questions if this uncanny ability is actually one of his skills. A suspicion takes root in her mind regarding the true nature of his powers. She reflects that controlling enemy movements seems too basic for a final boss. Francesca analyzes his capabilities against her knowledge of the game's mechanics. In the game, a strong character skill is usually overwhelming enough to end battles instantly. She recalls the devastating power typical of boss-level threats. It makes no sense for the game's strongest, most ruthless villain to waste time on petty tricks. She stares at him, puzzled by the discrepancy between his role and his actions. Leonardo takes her hand tenderly, calling her his dear. Francesca. She remains confused, finding it strange he possesses even a single support skill. He asks softly if Serenova frightened her. His concern masks the dangerous aura lurking beneath. He leans in, probing for her reaction to the encounter. The intensity of his gaze demands an answer. Even though his bloodlust isn't aimed at her, it sends shivers down her spine. She struggles to maintain her composure in his terrifying presence. She realizes with certainty that making an enemy of this man means death. A vision of his grasping hand reinforces her fear of his power. Suddenly, Graciano shoves Leonardo away with a forceful thrust. He physically inserts himself between the predator and his mistress. Leonardo mocks him as a loyal guard dog for his protectiveness. Graciano coldly demands he stop touching the young miss so casually. Leonardo claims she is his future bride and the lady of their house. He taunts Graciano, telling him to keep up the good work protecting his Francesca. Sparks fly between the two men as tension crackles in the air. Francesca groans in despair, realizing they are at it again. She steps in, shouting at both of them to quit it. Immediately her command cuts through their standoff with surprising force. She scolds Graciano for fighting with the head of another family. While grateful for the defense, she warns him not to overdo it. She insists she doesn't belong to anyone and shouldn't be used as an excuse for fights. To her surprise, Graciano blushes, thinking that being scolded isn't so bad. Francesca turns her attention to Leonardo with a sudden question. She shifts the topic, catching him off guard. She asks if girls have physical education in the schoolyard now. Leonardo confirms they do, pointing toward the location. She warns them one last time not to keep fighting. With a final point of her finger, she lays down the law. A bell chimes, signaling the end of their time together. Graciano slumps in disappointment as reality sets in. He laments losing his lunch break and realizes he must hurry. The interruption has cost him his peaceful moment. Graciano prepares to leave, bidding them farewell. Leonardo stops him with a smirk, calling out to the guard dog. Graciano pauses, turning back to face his rival. Leonardo's smile hides a sharp intent. He calls out to him, his expression darkening slightly. Graciano asks what he wants, wary of the sudden address. Leonardo asks directly if Graciano likes Francesca. The question hangs in the air, heavy and probing. Graciano freezes, a blush rising to his cheeks as he stammers. Leonardo smiles, his eyes gleaming with knowing amusement. Leonardo and Graciano stand motionless in the high-ceilinged corridor, tension radiating between them as the confrontation begins. Sweat beads on Graciano's face as he realizes the hopelessness of the situation and admits to himself that it is no use. He confesses internally that despite his overwhelming desire to kill the man in front of him, he cannot bring himself to act. Graciano accepts the bitter truth that he is simply no match for Leonardo's power. When Leonardo asks if he holds romantic feelings for the lady, Graciano flatly denies it and calls her annoying. Leonardo presses for clarity on the nature of their relationship if it is not romantic. Graciano hesitates for a moment as he searches for the right words to define her. He looks down and declares with conviction that she is like a sister to him. Leonardo smiles with genuine relief, glad to hear that a romantic rivalry does not exist between them. Graciano's expression remains serious as he prepares to state his conditions. He acknowledges that since their interests do not conflict, they do not need to be enemies. Graciano issues a sharp warning that if Leonardo ever hurts his sister, the truce is over. He vows that even if he lacks the strength to defeat Leonardo in a physical fight, he will not relent. Glaring with intense determination, Graciano threatens to do everything in his power to make Leonardo disappear. Leonardo chuckles softly, finding the threat amusing rather than frightening. He casually remarks that if Graciano sticks by her side with that kind of resolve, it works out perfectly. Leonardo notes that he won't have to worry about her safety at home thanks to Graciano's diligence. A dark silence fills the void between scenes as the confrontation ends. Graciano clicks his tongue in frustration, muttering about the man's overwhelming arrogance. The scene shifts to the grand exterior of the academy under a bright, cloud-streaked sky. Francesca calls out breathlessly, finally locating Leonardo after searching the grounds. Leonardo sits relaxed against a tree trunk and greets her casually. She asks what he is doing, and he reveals he has been playing ball. Leonardo hums a tune, remarking that it is nice to interact with other classes every once in a while. Francesca reflects that most students are usually too afraid to approach Leonardo. Yet she observes that he somehow maintains a group of friends who stand out in the crowd. She wonders skeptically if this counts as social skills given that he hardly ever attends school. Leonardo teases her, asking if she was looking for her loving fiancé, which annoys her. Francesca brushes off the teasing and states she came specifically to ask him something. Leonardo leans in with a charming smile, offering to teach his dear fiancé whatever she wants to know. Francesca's expression turns serious as she prepares to confront him. She mentally acknowledges that despite his villainy, his title as the highest-ranking beauty is well-deserved. Francesca drops the pretense and asks directly if he is involved with the drugs circulating in the capital. She swallows hard, realizing that asking such a question could trigger an all-out war between them. Leonardo senses her anxiety and assures her that she does not need to be nervous. He smiles warmly, claiming he would never do anything bad to her regardless of the situation. Francesca accepts his reassurance and insists that he answer her question. Leonardo covers a knowing smirk with his hand as he prepares to reveal the truth. He admits simply and without hesitation that he is indeed involved. His gaze sharpens as he challenges her, asking what she will do now that she knows the truth. Francesca answers instantly that she wants him to stop the operation immediately. Leonardo stares at her in silence, his expression unreadable. Internally, Francesca reveals she already knew Leonardo was the mastermind behind the scheme. In the original game story, Francesca and Ricardo would team up to investigate these events. Their investigation began by noticing a suspicious individual who didn't belong to any family. Another incident followed, providing the trail they needed to solve the mystery. That trail eventually led them to discover that Leonardo was pulling the strings. Back in reality, she argues that even if he profits from drugs, the ultimate loss would be greater than the gain. Francesca warns that violating the iron law endangers not just him, but the entire Aldini family. She leans in to emphasize that catching the King's Eye would result in an absolute disaster for everyone involved. Explaining the hierarchy, she notes that the 5 families act as the nobility of the underworld to carry out the king's dirty work. She reminds him that despite their criminal nature, they are privileged and treated as nobles. Francesca argues that normally one would avoid drawing the ire of the royal family, even if he doesn't share that mindset. She pauses, caught off guard by his sudden silence and intensity. Leonardo flashes a dangerous smile, promising to take care of the problem if that is what she desires. Flustered by his compliance, Francesca stammers that it depends entirely on what he wants in return. Leonardo laughs softly, addressing her with amusement as his beloved fiancé. He informs her that there is a ball next month taking place on the night of the full moon. With a charming expression, he offers to pick her up and asks her to go on a date with him. He simply wants to walk around with her and brag about his cute fiancée to everyone there. Francesca finds his request incredibly suspicious but agrees to the terms to put an end to the drug epidemic. She decides that whether Leonardo follows the iron law is none of her business. Admitting she has no right to dictate his actions, she focuses solely on stopping the incident from progressing. She concludes that she has no choice but to accept Leonardo's terms to resolve the crisis. Resigning herself to the task of cleaning up the mess, she agrees to the date and walks away from the story's original path. Leonardo stands in stunned silence, letting out a confused sound at her boldness. Francesca snaps back, demanding to know why he is surprised when he was the one who proposed the trade. He merely chuckles in response, seemingly entertained by her reaction. Walking away, he declares that he is honored by her acceptance. Beaming with genuine delight, he admits that he is already looking forward to their evening together. Francesca watches him go, thinking that his charming act isn't fooling anyone. She realizes that to go out at night, the real challenge will be persuading a much more difficult person. The scene shifts to the dining room where the silence is broken by the sound of cutlery. Francesca tenses up, noticing a presence approaching behind her. A maid welcomes the master home, noting that he must be tired from his hard work. Ewald Dante Calvino enters the room and greets Francesca warmly as she calls out to her papa. He asks if she was waiting for him despite his instructions to eat without him, while she insists she wanted to have dinner together. They begin to eat, but Francesca trembles nervously as she tries to compose herself. She wonders what is on the menu while anxiously planning how to bring up her request without causing a conflict. Imagining the worst, she pictures telling him about the date and seeing his shocked reaction. Narrative text introduces Ewald Dante Calvino, Francesca's father and the character with the highest rarity in the game. Women in high society constantly war over him, hoping to become the second wife of the youthful-looking 36-year-old. Francesca reflects that while he used to ignore her, he has now become overwhelmingly protective. This protective shift means she has to tread extremely carefully around him. She fears that if he knew about her plans with a boy, he might storm the Aldini household in a rage. Trying to summon her courage, she calls out to him, intending to cut to the chase. Ewald interrupts to apologize for being busy, explaining that his work is only natural to protect his daughter. He asserts that there is no better safety precaution than having him by her side, regardless of security measures. Francesca hesitates, realizing how difficult it is to ask for freedom when he is always home by 8 o'clock for her sake. Sensing her hesitation, Ewald asks with concern if she doesn't like tonight's soup. He immediately offers to call the chef to rectify the situation, mistaking her silence for dissatisfaction. His expression darkens instantly as he contemplates violent retribution against the chef. He threatens to shove his gun into the chef's mouth to teach him how it feels to taste something unappetizing. Francesca panics and loudly praises the vegetable flowers to distract him from his murderous thoughts. Internally, she screams in joy that he would actually destroy the producers if she complained, while he offers to ban any ingredient she dislikes. Ewald asks her to tell him what's wrong, and she vaguely admits she is troubled, unable to reveal the truth about the date or her dislike of carrots. Ewald darkly vows to stake the Calvino family pride on eliminating anyone who would harm her, forcing Francesca to nervously laugh off his intensity. He admits with a pensive expression that he has been selfish, having never attended social affairs himself. Concerned for her safety, he warns that if her face became well known, she would be put in all kinds of danger. His mind races with paranoid thoughts of jealous lowlives and criminals targeting her, praising her past decision to avoid such gatherings. Francesca interrupts his spiraling thoughts, clasping her hands together to announce that she has become interested in the social world. She lies that a classmate invited her to a party, causing Ewald to freeze in shock. His expression turns serious as he immediately guesses the name Aldini. Francesca is startled that he guessed correctly, while Ewald confirms his suspicion with a grave affirmation. He reveals that a messenger arrived earlier from the Aldini family regarding this very matter. Ewald holds up a document, questioning the nature of the letter sent to him. He explains that Leonardo formally requested to accompany Francesca to the party. The letter contains a solemn promise to protect her with his life and respect her wishes above all else. Francesca stares in shock at the bottom of the page, recognizing a blood signature. Ewald clarifies that signing the letter in blood signifies a willingness to sacrifice his own blood. He emphasizes the gravity of the act, noting that Leonardo did this solely to gain permission to escort her. In the underworld, a blood oath is absolute, and breaking it means the signatory is as good as dead. Francesca realizes Leonardo went to such lengths because she was reluctant to ask her father herself, acknowledging his gentlemanly side. Ewald sighs, acknowledging that he had heard Francesca and Aldini were in the same class. He explains that their betrothal is an ancient pact signed in blood between his father and Aldini's grandfather. Though he would normally refuse, he admits that Leonardo has taken the proper formal steps to escort her. Leaning in, he stresses that the only thing that truly matters is whether Francesca herself is willing to go. He asks her directly what she wants to do, waiting for her decision. With a gentle expression, he offers to provide as many false identities as she needs if she wishes to attend under a fake name. His face darkens instantly as he offers to take care of Leonardo if she refuses, causing Francesca to panic and shout that she wants to go. Ewald stares at her in stunned silence, clearly taken aback by her enthusiastic response. Francesca quickly invents an excuse about being curious after the academy, nervously insisting she really wants to go. Ewald looks utterly defeated, murmuring her name, while Francesca thinks he would lose his mind if he knew it was a bargain. The servants panic as Ewald clutches his face in despair, unable to process that his daughter wants to go with her fiancé. He confesses he thought Aldini had threatened her and was planning to make the man disappear in retaliation. Francesca reassures him it was just a casual invitation, desperate to calm him down for one last push. Suddenly realizing a logistical problem, Francesca exclaims that she doesn't have a dress to wear. Ewald calmly interjects that he has one, noting that evening gowns are typically custom-made. He reveals casually that he has new dresses made for her every single season. He clarifies that this includes evening gowns in addition to her everyday wear. Francesca is flabbergasted, having never heard about this secret wardrobe before. She points out that she grows every year, but he corrects her that he prepares for every season, implying a massive collection. He smiles gently, explaining he kept it secret so she wouldn't feel pressured to attend events she didn't want to. Francesca is touched by his consideration, calling out to him softly. Ewald's expression falls into shadow as he imagines her dressed up beautifully for the world to see. He mutters ominously that it will be an issue if nasty insects try to approach her. While Francesca excitedly thanks him for the dress, Ewald stares at the moon, resolving to destroy Aldini or perhaps the entire party. Under the light of the full moon, the Calvino estate stands silent and imposing on the night of the party. Ewald waits at the foot of the grand staircase, his servants lined up in disciplined silence behind him. Francesca descends the stairs in her gown, apologetically thanking her father for his patience. She nervously asks for his opinion, worried that her dressed-up appearance might look strange. Ewald stares at her in silence before letting out a heavy, dramatic sigh that alarms the servants. He turns to address the entire household staff with a serious demeanor. The servants immediately erupt into cheers, praising her cuteness and how splendid she looks. Francesca feels relieved but wishes Graciano were there to give an honest opinion instead of these doting admirers. She tries to reassure her father, but Ewald's anxiety spikes as he deems her too beautiful to go out safely. A servant interrupts the family moment to announce a guest's arrival. The young Lord Aldini enters the hall, drawing everyone's attention. Leonardo greets Ewald with a polite bow, addressing him formally as Lord Calvino. He thanks Ewald for entrusting his precious daughter to him for the evening. With a smirk, Leonardo teases Ewald about being even more doting than the rumor suggested. His expression sharpens as he declares that her value makes him even more determined to risk his life protecting her. Ewald coldly warns that if anything happens to his treasure, Leonardo's life will be insufficient payment. Francesca interrupts the intense standoff, pleading with her father not to worry so much. She smiles brightly, insisting that she will really be okay. Asserting her independence, she claims she is more than capable of taking care of herself. Internally, she resolves not to let Leonardo protect her, embracing her role as the young lady of Calvino. Ewald watches her with a mixture of resignation and silent acknowledgement of her growth. Francesca turns to Leonardo with a smile, asking if they should get going. She formally places herself in his care, addressing him as her escort. Leonardo accepts the role with a charming smile, promising to abide by her wishes. He gently takes her gloved hand, sealing their temporary partnership for the night. As they turn to leave, Francesca glances back to call out to her father one last time. She waves goodbye energetically, declaring that she is off to the party. Ewald watches her leave, a soft and gentle expression finally replacing his worry. He whispers a prayer for her safety as the carriage disappears into the night. The narrative shifts to explain the original game scenario where Ricardo escorts Francesca to investigate drug deals. In that original timeline, the party marks the first time she ever meets her fiancé Leonardo. The game's story dictates that she tries to stop an incident, incurs Leonardo's wrath, and discovers he is the mastermind. Francesca worries that Leonardo might just offer a flimsy excuse about failing to stop the epidemic despite his promise. She reasons that the immense profits from drug trafficking make it a difficult business to simply abandon. Doubting he would change his plans just for her, she fears he still intends to meet dealers tonight. Leonardo suddenly stops walking, catching Francesca off guard. She looks up in confusion, asking him what is wrong. He simply smiles down at her, his expression unreadable but warm. Leaning in close, he whispers that she looks cute, causing her to flush with embarrassment. He admits he had to try his best not to stare in front of her father because she looks more mature than usual. Complimenting her specific choices, he praises the off-the-shoulder design and her delicate figure. He continues to shower her with praise, admiring how the purple dress complements her red hair and movements. Francesca flusteredly tells him to stop the empty flattery, though he claims he is tired of letting other men look at her. He pauses again, noticing her reaction to his proximity. Francesca leans in and sniffs him, noting that he smells different than usual. He is surprised she remembers his scent, but she admits that his usual cologne is her favorite. He reveals the cologne is a brand called Red Rose, chosen specifically to match her family's crest. With a bashful look, he admits he wore it to try and impress her a little since he forced her to come along. Leonardo leans in with a suspicious gaze, noting that her ability to lie so boldly proves she must be in high spirits. He stares at her with a blank expression, waiting for her to reveal what is actually going on inside her head. Francesca finds him completely incomprehensible, but Leonardo simply bursts into laughter and declares that this behavior is exactly what makes her who she is. Francesca realizes that their relationship has evolved into something strange and completely different from the original game scenario. Suddenly remembering a crucial detail, she turns to her fiancé to get his attention. She asks him for a favor, and he generously agrees to grant any request she might have. With a bright and innocent smile, she asks if he would be willing to lend her a gun. Leonardo goes silent before claiming that he didn't bring any weapons because they are prohibited at tonight's event. Francesca immediately calls his bluff, pointing out that his perfectly tailored suit jacket is suspiciously loose. She deduces that his attire is exactly what someone concealing a hidden weapon would choose to wear. Admitting she is nervous about her first party, she explains her fear of danger, prompting Leonardo to admit he underestimated her. He relents with a sigh, deciding that he cannot refuse if it means securing her peace of mind. As he hands over the real weapon, she verifies its authenticity and thanks him for the lethal loan. Leonardo claims he needs the weapon to protect his adorable fiancée, but Francesca internally dismisses him as a liar since he is invincible anyway. When he asks where she intends to conceal it, she boldly lifts her dress to reveal a holster strapped to her thigh. She secures the weapon and holds a finger to her lips, warning him strictly not to tell her father. The carriage comes to a halt as the driver announces their arrival at the party venue. Narrative text declares the beginning of the first chapter of the story, 9 Stories. This is the fated stage where the game's worst event is destined to occur. Steeling her resolve, Francesca vows to absolutely put a stop to the coming tragedy at any cost. A collective gasp echoes through the grand hall as guests marvel at the opulent venue under a starry dome. Francesca stares up in awe, mesmerized by the sheer size and beauty of the massive chandelier. Leonardo smoothly compliments her, likening her eyes to jewels reflecting the chandelier's light. The party is in full swing with elegant live music and an array of gourmet food on display. Despite the glamorous surface, Francesca sharply notes the heavy presence of underworld figures. Turning to Leonardo, she begins to ask him for a specific favor. A voice interrupts them calling for Lord Aldini, cutting off Francesca's request to avoid academy students. Count Tavano approaches with a beaming smile, delighted to see the young lord. The Count expresses immense gratitude, crediting the Aldini family for his casino's recent success. Francesca recognizes him as the head of the Tavano family who governs the southern region. She observes the power dynamic where the older Count bows to Leonardo, indebted for financial rescue. Turning his attention to Francesca, the Count calls her enchanting and asks for her name. Leonardo cuts in sharply, his voice dropping to a chilling tone as he addresses Tavano. He demands to know if he gave permission for the Count to speak to the lady. The Count freezes, terrified by the menacing aura radiating from Leonardo. Panic-stricken, the Count apologizes profusely and flees, leaving Francesca stunned by the interaction. Francesca scolds Leonardo for his rudeness as the surrounding guests begin to whisper. The crowd murmurs in shock at his behavior and notices Francesca addressing him familiarly. Bystanders question the identity of the young lady who dares to call him Leonardo. Ignoring the commotion, Leonardo casually asks her how people usually address her. Francesca accuses him of lying about not being picky, citing his demand for bare minimum civility. He admits the deception, stating he wouldn't let just anyone use his first name. With a charming smile, he reveals she is the only person in the world allowed to call him Leonardo. Francesca realizes with horror that she slipped into her previous life's habit of using first names. Flustered, she stammers and tries to correct her address to something more formal. She attempts to say, Lord Leonardo, but he bursts into laughter at her sudden formality. He teases her about feeling playful, while she trembles at how scary he can be. Leonardo bows dramatically, offering his service to his princess, if she simply asks. The crowd's murmurs intensify, and Francesca panics that they are causing a massive scene. Leonardo glares at the onlookers, annoyed that they are exposing his cute fiancée to the public eye. Francesca insists that he doesn't need to be so overprotective. She offers to introduce herself to avoid causing problems later on. Leonardo catches on to her phrasing later on, with a knowing look. When she mentions breaking their engagement, he laughs and asks if she means after they are married. Francesca admits she is actually feeling a bit worried about the situation. Leonardo reveals he originally planned to keep her identity hidden tonight. However, seeing other men look at her, he decides he must show her off as his fiancée. Francesca decides to use the fake name, Trovato, noting her family's absence. Nearby guests gossip that the Calvino daughter has no skills and never appears in society. They mock her status, but Francesca smiles, finding it refreshing to be the subject of gossip. She explains to Leonardo that staying out of society allows her to live a peaceful life. She considers herself lucky that these widespread rumors prevent suspicion about her absence. Francesca urges Leonardo to move on, trying to pull him away from the gossipers. A sharp intensity suddenly overtakes Leonardo's expression, signaling danger. Francesca calls out his name in alarm, sensing his sudden shift in mood. He tells her to wait and she panics, asking what he intends to do to those people. Leonardo darkly assures her that he won't kill them right in front of her. Leaning in, he whispers that he will simply make them repent a little for their disrespect. Leonardo's expression darkens into a mask of disgust as he declares that the guests must atone for the harsh words slung at his dear one. He begins to peel off his glove with slow, deliberate menace, signaling his intent to get his hands dirty. A dangerous smile plays on his lips as he seeks confirmation for his murderous intent from a terrified Francesca. Francesca stares at him in sheer disbelief, realizing he is genuinely planning to cause a violent scene right now. Panicking, she screams, "Absolutely not," to stop him from slaughtering the guests on her behalf. Grabbing his arm, she physically drags him away from the crowd, demanding they leave immediately. Once on the balcony, Francesca scolds him to leave those people alone, though he claims not to understand why she would stop him. Leonardo sulks, complaining that he is forced to ignore the people who dared to insult her. Relenting to her wishes, he agrees to let the matter go if it makes her happy, though he remains visibly annoyed. Francesca points out that her powerful father would protect her, but she insists she doesn't want to be coddled or protected. Leonardo listens intently as she questions why he pretends she has no skills. He stares at her in silence, waiting for her elaboration on her philosophy regarding skills and worth. Francesca explains that society measures a person's worth by the strength of their skills, a system she hates. She laments that people with weak or useless skills are looked down upon and constantly questioned. Society judges them, wondering if their lack of ability comes from having a commoner's blood. Because they have no place on the surface, many drift into the underworld just to survive. Francesca argues that many have no choice, maligning by their bloodline and lack of skills from the start. Even if they wanted a decent life on the surface, she explains they would have chosen the underworld without hesitation due to lack of options. Touching the rose on her chest, she declares that for her, it is not just about bloodline or skills. The camera focuses on her determination as she prepares to state her true desire for the world. She wants to live in a world where people of different kinds can make use of their strengths. Leonardo finishes her thought, asking if she means a world where life is worth more than just lineage. Francesca beams with excitement, amazed that Leonardo actually understands her perspective. Overwhelmed with joy, she confesses that nobody has ever really understood what she was saying before. She celebrates the feeling of finally making a friend who gets her, calling the moment amazing. Leonardo looks at her with a softened expression, quietly saying her name. He asks her to call him Leonardo one more time. Francesca hesitates but complies, slowly pronouncing his name again. Leonardo smiles genuinely, admitting that it feels nice to be called by his name. Francesca observes him, thinking that despite his demeanor, he is actually quite a lonely person. He corrects her thought, whispering that he only feels lonely around her. Even though she knows he is a liar, Francesca feels like he is telling the truth this time. Without warning, Leonardo pulls her into a tight embrace, catching her off guard. Flustered, Francesca yells at him to wait a second and demands to know what he is doing. She tries to negotiate, telling him to leave the drug problem in the capital alone. Leonardo refuses, stating a peaceful life needs a peaceful environment, and tells her to run away from him as soon as she can. As she struggles to get free, he holds her tighter, warning that it will be harder to let go if she keeps acting like this. He holds her face in his hands, laughing and calling her his cute Francesca. His expression shifts to a dark obsession as he professes his love and warns her not to bore him. Furious, Francesca snaps back that she is not his toy and absolutely hates this treatment. Leonardo suddenly hugs her again, telling her she doesn't have to pretend to confess just to hide him. He gives a small, knowing chuckle as he holds her close. Patting her head, he tells her to stay still, sensing an arrival. A shadow falls over the balcony as a voice asks if Aldini was there all along. Leonardo glances back sharply, remarking that it is rude to get in the way of a lover's tryst. The intruder is revealed to be Ricardo, who stares down the young lord with a stern expression. Ricardo corners the couple on the balcony, declaring he has something important to say to Leonardo. He asserts that Leonardo has no right to refuse him, as the matter concerns a solemn blood pact. Francesca watches nervously as Leonardo faces her father with a cool, unbothered expression. Ricardo glares at the younger man, barely concealing his opinion that Leonardo is a rude man. Pulling Francesca closer, Leonardo mockingly claims Ricardo is frightening this poor, ordinary young lady. Francesca realizes Leonardo is protecting her identity from schoolmates just as she asked, playing along with the charade. Disgusted, Ricardo accuses Leonardo of despicably using a woman from the surface as a shield. Ignoring the insult, Ricardo declares he has just one question for the young lord. He brings up the illegal drugs circulating in the capital, which are a direct violation of the iron law. Point blank, Ricardo accuses Leonardo of being the mastermind behind the epidemic. Leonardo meets the accusation with a confident, inscrutable smile. He asks if Ricardo would even believe him if he denied it, to which Ricardo admits he wouldn't. Leonardo points out the futility, noting that a denial would cause a fuss while silence would be taken as a confession. He dismisses the entire conversation, calling it stupid to engage in such a pointless argument. Leonardo attempts to shift the focus, stating that there are more important things to discuss. Ricardo, unimpressed by the evasion, perceives Leonardo's behavior as shady and dismissive. He shouts that betraying a blood pact is a serious crime against the iron law, demanding Leonardo stop messing around. Suddenly, Francesca lets out a dry, sarcastic laugh, interrupting the tension. Ricardo turns his glare on her, telling her she should live more wisely. She counters by asking why anyone should follow outdated customs or rules simply because they exist. Ricardo argues that traditions are the fruit of wisdom and inherited wealth, created by ancestors to solve problems. Leonardo cuts in, hypothetically assuming he is the mastermind, and asks Ricardo how far he is willing to go. He spreads his arms, declaring there is no point in asking informal questions in a setting like this. Challenging Ricardo, he reminds him that under the blood pact, he must bring him before a tribunal to do this properly. Leonardo vows he will submit to such a process anytime in the name of His Majesty the King. He taunts Ricardo, warning him that if he wants to get rid of him, he better do it quickly. He threatens that his family will wipe everything out while Ricardo is too busy preserving tradition. Ricardo stands frozen, sweat beading on his face as the weight of the threat lands. Gritting his teeth in frustration, Ricardo is forced to back down. Francesca realizes that, Just as Leonardo said, her father has no next move. She recalls that even in the game, Ricardo only approached Leonardo because he lacked conclusive evidence. The game scenario involved them coming to the ball to gather evidence, but Leonardo would never admit fault. Ricardo decides to leave the matter for now, promising they will discuss it soon enough. He walks away, wishing Leonardo luck and saying he looks forward to seeing what he finds. Suddenly, Leonardo breaks character with a playful sound, startling Francesca and confusing Ricardo. Francesca asks if he has a cold, while Ricardo dismisses the odd behavior with a scoff. Ricardo turns to leave, clearly done with the young lord's antics. He pauses to advise Francesca to stay far away from Leonardo, and she stammers a muffled thank you. As Ricardo finally exits, Francesca trembles while Leonardo tries to suppress his laughter. The moment they are alone, Leonardo bursts into uncontrollable laughter. Wiping a tear, he asks if she saw Ricardo's furrowed brows, though Francesca notes she couldn't see past him. Francesca sighs in relief, having expected the worst event of the evening to trigger. She recalls the game scenario where her interference usually causes Leonardo to get angry and activate his skill. Anxious, she calls out to Leonardo to gauge his mood. She asks if he is angry, fearing the game's inevitable panic event. Leonardo looks at her with genuine affection, asking why he would be angry with his adorable Francesca. Francesca observes him closely, realizing he truly doesn't seem angry at all. She reflects that he hasn't used any skills yet, hoping that if the party ends safely, disaster will be averted. Francesca clutches her chest, suddenly overcome by an inexplicable wave of anxiety despite the peaceful atmosphere. She tries to rationalize her fear, telling herself that Leonardo wouldn't use his skills without a proper reason, regardless of the game scenario. She reminds herself that the Leonardo standing before her is a real person with his own thoughts, not just a scripted game character. Despite this logic, a heavy sense of dread settles in her gut, warning her that something bad is about to happen. A piercing scream suddenly cuts through the air, confirming her worst fears. Leonardo's expression instantly shifts from relaxed to sharp alertness as he notices the disturbance. As he steps toward the commotion, Francesca freezes, realizing she recognizes the voice that just screamed. The sound of shattering glass echoes nearby, and Francesca whispers, "No way," in disbelief. The scene reveals Ricardo violently grabbing a man by the lapels while Francesca yells for her father to calm himself. A split-second flashback reveals the cause of his rage. The man had raised a wine bottle to strike a defenseless maid. Ricardo roars in fury, demanding the man take his filthy hands off her immediately. The hall erupts into chaos with guests screaming for security while the arrogant attacker yells, "Don't touch me." The attacker is sent flying backward into a group of ladies, causing them to shriek as he crashes into them. Francesca watches in stunned silence, unable to process the violence unfolding before her eyes. Under the grand chandelier, the chaos intensifies as Ricardo refuses to tolerate the man's behavior while bystanders panic. The image of the man raising the bottle against the maid flashes again, emphasizing the imminent danger that sparked the brawl. Ricardo tightens his grip on the attacker's collar, his face twisted in righteous indignation as he intervenes. The attacker is thrown back once more, crashing violently into the crowd in a replay of the chaotic scene. Francesca stands frozen in shock, whispering, "No way," as she witnesses the event she feared, but with her father at the center. Francesca realizes with a start that the chaotic event has already begun, her eyes widening in alarm. Confusion washes over her as she struggles to process the sudden turn of events. Leonardo stands directly before her, a calm and imposing figure amidst the brewing storm. In the original game scenario, Ricardo and Francesca are supposed to work together to prevent the partygoers from killing each other. Desperate to avoid tragedy, Francesca resolves to find Ricardo immediately, knowing she cannot handle this trouble alone. Leonardo whirls around in a flash, cutting off her escape with a sharp refusal. He grabs her arm, his voice low and dangerous as he denies her attempt to leave. Pulling her into a forced dance, he creates an absurd scene amidst the rising tension. It seems ludicrous that the man who claims to want a peaceful life is the very one instigating such chaos. Francesca glares at him, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief at his hypocrisy. Screams erupt from the hall as guests beg for help, but Leonardo pins Francesca against the wall. She pleads with him to stop, warning that someone might get hurt if they don't intervene immediately. A dark smile plays on his lips as he challenges her, asking what she will do if he simply says no. Fury rises in her chest, and she shouts his name in a mix of warning and desperation. She realizes she cannot reveal her knowledge of his mastermind role without raising suspicion, leaving her trapped. With no other option, she reaches for the weapon hidden in her dress, resolving to take drastic action. The two lock eyes, a silent battle of wills passing between them before she makes her move. Leonardo reacts with genuine surprise as she draws the gun on him. Suddenly, an oppressive weight crushes her body, leaving her confused and unable to move. She realizes with dread that he has activated his dominating skill to subdue her. He looms over her, his voice dripping with possessive affection as he calls her his sweet Francesca. He chides her for recklessly rushing into danger, treating the situation like a scolding parent. Gesturing to the balcony, he suggests they stay put and watch the chaos unfold below together. He claims his duty is to protect her peace and ensure Ricardo doesn't spot her. Outraged, she snaps back, demanding to know if he truly thinks she cares about her own peace right now. Leonardo watches her struggle with an amused, unbothered expression. Francesca fights the overwhelming pressure, fearing that losing consciousness will turn her into his puppet. As her vision blurs, she clings to the thought that she cannot let innocent people get hurt. A horrifying realization strikes her. The guests aren't just panicking, they are being controlled by Leonardo's ability. He commands her to be a good girl, noting that this was how the scenario was supposed to play out. Extending his hand, he calmly demands that she give him back the gun. Her hand trembles violently as she grips the revolver, fighting his control with everything she has. The hammer clicks, and she freezes, knowing that crying out for help is not an option. She strengthens her resolve, believing firmly that villains have no right to drag innocents into their schemes. Leonardo admits he ran away from the game's story because he is a bad person, despite being the protagonist. Gritting her teeth, Francesca recalls the lessons she was taught about endurance. A memory flashes of her grandfather shot and bleeding, with subordinates panicking around him. The old man had simply remarked that the situation was no good, maintaining his composure. He had ordered his men to shut up and dig the bullet out of his stomach immediately. Later, the young Francesca asked if it hurt, and he admitted it hurt like hell. She noted he didn't look like he was in pain, and he laughed, saying he had to grin and bear it. He explained that he bluffed to keep up appearances so his men wouldn't get nervous. He taught her that a strong bluff can even convince yourself to do things normally impossible. Even if you cannot move your own body, the will to act can override physical limits. Leonardo lets out a small, impressed chuckle at her resistance. He asks how she intends to go against the game scenarios with just willpower. With a look of genuine admiration, he tells her she is truly amazing. However, he notes that throughout history, very few have resisted skills through sheer force of will. He reveals the terrifying truth that he has been going easy on her the whole time. Touching the gun barrel, he assures her it's okay because they both know she doesn't want to shoot him. His hand moves to disarm her, confident in his control over the situation. He instructs her to just wait there quietly while the event plays out. Francesca defies him again, demanding that he let her go. His expression hardens slightly as he orders her to put the gun down. She refuses with a sharp, defiant no, shocking him. Determining to bluff her way out, she declares she would sooner shoot herself than submit. In a bold move, she presses the muzzle of the revolver against her own temple. She glares at him triumphantly, proving that she can threaten him too. Leonardo's composure cracks as he tensely orders her to put the gun down. She refuses him again, holding her ground. With the gun still at her head, she repeats her vow to bluff her way out or die trying. She drives the point home, asserting once more that she has the power to threaten him. Servants greet Ricardo with a formal bow, wishing the young master a good morning as he begins his day. Ricardo buttons his shirt and returns the greeting, acknowledging the start of his routine. A servant presents coffee made from Southeast gelada beans, which Ricardo praises as delicious. The staff asks if he requires his usual breakfast, maintaining his standard schedule. He confirms the meal but decides to engage in a quick workout before sitting down to eat. Ricardo unleashes a sharp, powerful strike, his focus narrowing entirely on his training. His target is a training dummy, which stands ready to receive the force of his blow. A devastating impact sends the dummy flying, shattering parts of it with sheer force. His attention snaps to the ground behind the target, where he spots a small, trembling creature. A tiny kitten lets out a meow, and Ricardo immediately apologizes for startling it with his violence. Crouching down, he notes how small it is and wonders aloud where its mother could be. He looks at the helpless animal with a resigned expression, deciding that he cannot simply ignore it. His gaze intensifies as he prepares to interact with the stray, his demeanor shifting to focused concern. He reaches out a hand, but his looming shadow and intensity terrify the kitten, causing it to flinch. Despite the scary approach, he gently touches the kitten's head with a single finger to reassure it. With a soft smile, he promises the little one that he will return shortly to take care of it. The kitten is left confused in the grass, a question mark floating over its head as he departs. It sits alone in the quiet garden, waiting for his return. Dressed for business, Ricardo bids his staff a good day as he prepares to leave the estate. As he walks down the path, he suddenly stops, prompting a confused look from his attendant. He tells them to hold on while he checks the garden, ignoring the servant who points toward the carriage. Ricardo arrives at the spot and freezes, his eyes widening in surprise at the scene before him. A relieved smile crosses his face as he tells his staff to forget the detour. Watching the kitten happily reunited with its mother, he muses that his protection. Francesca confronts Leonardo, reminding him of his solemn promise to her father to protect her with his very life. She reasons that because of his vow, he cannot shoot her, and wonders if shooting herself would be the easier way to force his hand. Pressing the gun firmly to her head, she commands him to release her from his controlling skill immediately. With a defiant smile, she tells him to let her go so she can stop the chaos unfolding downstairs. Leonardo stares at her in silence, his expression unreadable as he assesses her resolve. He closes his eyes and exhales a long breath, realizing she has checkmated him. Admitting defeat, he tells her it is his loss as she holds the weapon steady. Francesca feels the invisible hold vanish and lowers the gun, stumbling slightly as she regains control. She stares at her hand in amazement, confirming that she can finally move on her own. Without hesitation, she thanks Leonardo and turns to run toward the stairs to save the others. She sprints past him, her dress rustling as she abandons the balcony for the danger below. Leonardo watches her retreating figure, muttering a quiet oath of surprise at her tenacity. He notes that this is the first time someone has not let him have his way. Below, the banquet hall has descended into madness, with guests screaming as violence erupts under the chandeliers. Panic consumes the crowd as people beg for mercy or threaten to kill one another in a frenzy. Francesca arrives at the railing, witnessing the brawl and hearing the pained cries of the students. She realizes with frustration that she cannot physically stop every individual fight on her own. Forcing herself to stay cool, she decides she must act calmly and rationally to navigate the riot. Her primary objective solidifies as she scans the crowd to quickly find Ricardo. She spots a noble amidst the fray and shouts for the Baron to open his eyes and snap out of it. Her gaze darts across the room until she finally locates her target in the chaos. A student screams violent threats nearby, but Francesca ignores the noise to focus on her destination. She feels relief seeing that he is safe, noting that the aggravation skill seems ineffective on him. She deduces that Leonardo's skill does not work on nobles of a higher rank than himself. Francesca rushes toward Ricardo, shouting his name as she sees him protecting another man. Ricardo holds his father, asking urgently how much longer he can maintain his general defense skill. His father, the head of the Serenova family, sweats profusely and admits he cannot hold the barrier for much longer. The general defense skill is revealed to be a power that temporarily boosts the defense of those the user identifies as allies. Francesca realizes Ricardo activated the skill just like in the game, preventing any mortal wounds so far. Thanks to the buff, the frenzied attacks are only causing shallow cuts instead of lethal injuries. However, she knows that shallow wounds are still dangerous and the situation is critical. Acknowledging that a direct hit to the heart would still be fatal and the skill is temporary, she pushes herself to reach him immediately. Her face tightens with focus as she sprints into the heart of the danger. Behind Ricardo, a woman in a trance raises a heavy bottle to strike him while his back is turned. Francesca spots the ambush, shocked that even a student like this has been affected. The attacker screams that he is an eyesore, swinging the weapon down with vicious intent. Ricardo turns at the last second, his eyes widening as he realizes the attack is coming too late to dodge. Screaming about a transfer student, Francesca dives in and intercepts the attacker before the blow lands. The woman holds the jagged remains of the bottle, her expression blank and hostile. She sways unsteadily, looking confused as her attack is thwarted. Francesca grapples with her, forcing the attacker to the ground to neutralize the threat. A shard of glass falls harmlessly as the woman sighs that it was close, seemingly losing consciousness. Suddenly, Ricardo yells a warning for the transfer student to look out. Francesca looks up in confusion, unaware of the new threat looming over her. A male student stands over her with a weapon, a crazed smile on his face as he prepares to stab her. He shrieks for her to die, bringing the weapon down with full force. A dark figure intercepts the blow with a heavy thud, shielding Francesca from the attack. The sound of a violent impact echoes as the attacker is stopped cold. Francesca flinches, opening her eyes to see who has saved her. Leonardo stands tall before her, having caught the attacker's arm with ease. He sighs, complaining that he honestly cannot leave her alone for even a minute. Holding the attacker at bay, he asks what they would do if she got a scratch on her adorable face. The attacker looks stunned, unable to overpower Leonardo's grip. Leonardo glares at the boy with terrifying intensity, his playful demeanor vanishing. The attacker collapses, unconscious, as Leonardo smiles casually at the result. Francesca stares at him in shock while he simply says, "Well then." He scolds her for being reckless, helps her with the unconscious girl, and checks if she is hurt. Francesca stammers her thanks, still processing his sudden intervention. Ricardo storms onto the scene, shouting for Aldini to step away from the transfer student immediately. He demands to know if this chaos is Leonardo's doing and why he is involved with a student like Francesca. Furious, Ricardo orders Ricardo and Leonardo face off in a tense standoff, the air thick with unspoken animosity. Francesca breaks the silence by calling Leonardo's name, drawing his sharp gaze. Ricardo exhales a heavy sigh, clearly exasperated by the unfolding drama. He commands the sane guests to gather and snaps at Leonardo, asking if this is really the time for discussion. Panic erupts as guests scramble to seal the ballroom doors while begging for help against their crazed friends. Francesca spots Ricardo's father struggling and calls out to him with urgency. Mr. Serenova asks if she is all right and begs for Leonardo's strength, admitting he overheard their conversation. Francesca ignores the pleasantries and urgently asks if he possesses the general defense ability. He apologizes, explaining that even if he could use it again, the effect would only last a short time. Francesca interrupts him, revealing she has a skill that can help. Leonardo interjects, asking ominously if she is truly sure she wants to do this. She smiles knowingly, acknowledging that this is a secret he and his father have kept hidden for a long time. Leonardo warns that using her skill here exposes her to unknown witnesses. He cautions that if the Serenova family discovers the truth about her abilities, there will be consequences. Ricardo listens intently, his expression darkening with concern over the revelation. Leonardo delivers a harsh truth, stating that her hope for a peaceful life may never come true. Francesca counters firmly, telling Leonardo that he is wrong. She declares she could never live a peaceful life in a world that discards the lives of others. Her eyes shine with resolve as she steels herself for the sacrifice. A brilliant light engulfs her as she activates her power. She reaches out to Mr. Serenova, commanding his attention. She explains her skill allows her to raise the usage limit of a target skill by exactly 1 time. Leonardo notes it is actually a permanent enhancement and asks if she is seriously going through with it. Desperate, Francesca shouts for them to just believe her. Ricardo watches the exchange, his suspicion giving way to a calculated trust. Mr. Serenova accepts her offer, taking her hand and saying he understands. Energy flows between them as Francesca uses her skill to enhance the Baron's capacity. Her eyes widen with intensity as the skill count officially increases to 2. The transfer of power completes, leaving the room charged with new potential. Mr. Serenova looks at his glowing hand, feeling the surge of renewed strength. He confirms with conviction that he can indeed use his general defense skill one more time. Francesca adds a crucial detail, noting that it is not just the defense skill that has been affected. The Baron realizes the range has expanded to cover the entire building and the power is amplified. Suddenly, a crazed guest swings a weapon at Ricardo from his blind spot. Francesca throws herself into the fray, shoving Ricardo out of harm's way. Leonardo moves faster than sight, intercepting the attack while Francesca thanks him. He deflects the blow effortlessly, reminding Francesca that she is the one he is protecting. Francesca marvels at his strength, realizing he is even more powerful than she expected. She notes his raw physical ability is off the charts, separate from his skills. Mr. Serenova seizes the moment and activates general defense. A barrier forms around them as Ricardo punches a frenzied attacker with renewed confidence. He fights back against the mob, his movements sharp and protected by the buff. Leonardo smirks, seemingly satisfied with the turn of events. He observes that the defense skill is active but notes there is more to come. The Baron unleashes the second part of the enhanced ability. He shouts the activation for status restoration. A blinding light washes over the entire ballroom, halting the chaos instantly. The guests stop their fighting, blinking in confusion as their sanity returns. A male guest blinks in confusion as he returns to his senses, while the woman beside him looks around in a daze. Murmurs ripple through the ballroom as the attendees wake from their trance, wondering if they are finally back to normal. Ricardo wipes the sweat from his brow, relieved that the nightmare is over and everyone is saved. Francesca watches him, noting that she obviously knows all of his skills from playing the game in her past life. She recalls that at its maximum level his general defense skill prevents all damage, while his second skill is a powerful healing ability. This secondary ability is specifically designed to remove all status conditions from nearby allies instantly. Francesca deduces that Ricardo must have activated that specific skill immediately when the first mind-controlled guest appeared. However, because the skill cannot be used repeatedly, he was unable to reverse the affliction as it spread to the rest of the crowd. Suddenly, Mr. Serenova stirs, and Ricardo cries out to his father in relief. The Baron wakes up completely bewildered, demanding to know what the hell happened to everyone. Francesca weeps comically, wailing that her hopes for a peaceful life are ruined now that she has exposed her true power. Sniffing back tears, she tries to convince herself to accept the consequences since the risk was unavoidable. Her internal monologue is interrupted when she notices Leonardo staring at her with a calm expression. She calls his name hesitantly, unsure of what he is planning to do next. Leonardo smirks at Ricardo, remarking that even someone as naive as him should know exactly what needs to be done here. Ricardo abruptly turns and walks away, leaving his father confused and reaching out to him. Glancing back with a sharp look, Ricardo tells the others to quit fooling around as he prepares to address the room. He loudly theorizes that there must have been someone with skills similar to his own amongst the guests who were unwell. He continues to spin the narrative, suggesting that this unknown person is the one who removed the afflictions. Closing his eyes, he proposes that this mystery savior must have used their skill instinctively during the chaos. Leonardo plays along with a smile, agreeing that whoever it was, their intervention was a big help. Francesca realizes with relief that Ricardo is reading the room and actively spinning a cover story to protect her identity. Leonardo immediately grabs Francesca, whispering that they should leave before the head of the Serenova family looks their way. He guides her away from the scene, ignoring her stammered protests as they make their escape. Leonardo glances back one last time with a satisfied smirk, knowing their secret is safe. Ricardo bows respectfully to his father, maintaining the ruse as Francesca and Leonardo disappear unnoticed into the distance. Francesca exhales deeply, her shoulders slumping as the adrenaline finally leaves her body. She confesses that she is absolutely exhausted, her voice trembling slightly. A warm weight settles on her shoulders as Leonardo drapes his coat over her. She looks up in surprise at the unexpected gesture of kindness. Leonardo smiles gently, watching her reaction with amusement. Francesca stammers a thank you, pulling the coat tighter around herself. Leonardo playfully offers that if she is still cold, she can cling to him for warmth. Flustered, she immediately refuses, saying she will refrain from doing that. Leonardo watches her with a soft, knowing gaze as she avoids his eyes. He remarks that she is truly unpredictable, comparing her to a bullet ricocheting off walls. Francesca scowls, asking if that is supposed to be a compliment. He laughs, assuring her that of course it is, though she calls him a liar. His expression turns serious as he wonders if Ricardo will really keep quiet about her skill. He concludes that since Ricardo is a stupid and hard-headed man, he might actually do it. Walking away, he muses that if Ricardo decides it is polite to keep the secret, he will do so earnestly. Francesca watches his back, murmuring that she sees what he means. A sudden realization strikes her, and she calls out to him. She admits honestly that she was actually looking forward to the party tonight. With a bright smile, she confesses she was hoping to make friends since there were so many girls her age. Ricardo listens silently, his expression unreadable as she pours out her heart. Her smile falters as she realizes that her hope for a special outing has been ruined. Dejected, she concludes that if she wants a friend that badly, maybe she won't be able to make any in this life after all. Leonardo interrupts her pity party, asking simply what about him. Francesca stares at him blankly, asking what he means by that. He clarifies his offer, stating plainly that he will be her friend. Francesca freezes, processing the words as her mind races to catch up. She remains silent for a beat too long, her expression unreadable. Leonardo misinterprets her silence, his confidence wavering slightly. He assumes she hates the idea and awkwardly tells her to never mind. Francesca suddenly shouts his name, stopping him in his tracks. Her eyes wide with hope, she asks if he will really be her friend. Leonardo looks back at her, his expression softening into a genuine smile. He starts to speak, saying, but trails off as he sees her reaction. Francesca beams with pure joy, saying she accepts if that is what he wants. She thanks him exuberantly, excited to finally have a friend. Immediately planning their friendship, she suggests eating lunch together in the cafeteria. She excitedly proposes walking to and from school together from now on. Leonardo is overwhelmed by her enthusiasm, repeating her suggestions with mild disbelief. Francesca continues listing activities, suggesting they eat tasty food and buy each other gifts. Leonardo stammers, trying to interrupt her rapid-fire planning. He smiles wryly, amused by her energy but unable to stop her flow. He cuts in with a small laugh, agreeing to her plans despite himself. Francesca is startled by his laugh, asking if he is making fun of her. He denies it, but she remains suspicious of his amusement. Still smiling, he tells her that in return, she must promise him something. He leans in close, warning her not to let herself be deceived by bad men like him. He frames it as advice from a friend, his tone serious despite the closeness. Francesca wonders if she should take that to mean he no longer plans to lie to her, knowing it might be impossible for him. Francesca admits that being friends does not mean she can speak honestly about everything. She acknowledges that she too has secrets that must remain hidden. Even with a friend, she realizes some truths cannot be shared. Her thoughts drift to the cracked logic regarding the night's incident. In the game, Leonardo caused the brawl by using his domination skill from the balcony. Francesca realizes that this scenario is impossible given tonight's events. When the commotion broke out, Leonardo was standing right beside her. Leonardo explains that powerful skills require time to become available again after use. Francesca recalls that no character in the game possessed multiple skills with the same effect. She reasons that having 2 domination skills would be too simple for a final boss. She considers if his subordinates acted alone but admits she cannot be sure yet. Leonardo suggests they head back, noting her father and brother will be worried. Francesca reflects on how Leonardo was presented as the mastermind from the very start of the game. Watching him, she begins to question if that narrative is actually true. She wonders if he really is the mastermind she believed him to be. She remembers that only 5 of the 7 chapters were published before she died. A sudden realization strikes her as she looks at his back. She thinks back to the moment they entered the main hall together. Leonardo mentions noticing something she had missed during their arrival. He reveals that her father and brother were already there, watching over her. He notes that they seemingly left before the commotion started, surprising Francesca. She considers that the real mastermind might appear in the unpublished chapters. A chilling thought occurs that the culprit could be one of the protagonist's allies. However, she knows the game scenario still indicates a high probability of danger from Leonardo. She concludes that even if they are friends now, he is technically still her enemy. Her expression hardens, deciding that friendship does not automatically grant him her trust. Yet, the events of the night have introduced the possibility that someone else is pulling the strings. As they walk together in the moonlight, the mystery deepens around them. Francesca is left with the haunting question of who is truly behind all of this. 2 weeks pass, and the flow of drugs in the capital finally begins to dwindle. Francesca spots Leonardo and sprints toward him, her face flushed with exertion. Leonardo apologizes for the wait, while Francesca beams, thinking what a good friend he is. She reflects on how enjoyable her daily life has become since making her first friend at the ball. Leonardo notices her heavy breathing and asks if she ran all the way there. He gently chides her, telling her she didn't need to rush so much. Reaching out, he comments that her pretty hair has become a mess. His fingers carefully smooth out the disheveled strands. Francesca stares at him blankly, asking if that is something a friend would actually say. She pities him internally as he mutters an excuse about his habit of hitting on beautiful girls. Leonardo's expression turns serious as he reminds her that today's outing isn't their usual hangout. Francesca confirms she is ready, acknowledging this is a personal matter she must face. He watches her with a quiet, contemplative gaze. A shadow falls over his face as he prepares to escort her. At a flower shop, Leonardo charms the shopkeeper with smooth compliments to buy a bouquet. The elderly woman giggles at his flattery while Francesca watches in mild disbelief. She looks up at him, surprised by his effortless charisma. Leonardo smiles, holding the roses, and says he would be happy to greet her mother as a friend. He looks down at the flowers, hoping her mother will appreciate the gift. With a gentle smile, he asks if they should get going. Francesca agrees with a determined nod, ready to move forward. A church steeple rises high against the sky, marking their destination. They walk through the cemetery grounds as Francesca greets her mama after a long time. She introduces Leonardo to the grave of Serafine Calvino, announcing she brought a friend. Francesca kneels before the tombstone while Leonardo stands respectfully behind her. He waits in silence, clutching the bouquet of roses as she pays her respects. A somber look crosses his face as he listens to her speak. Francesca reveals that her mother died giving birth to her. Because of this, she has no memories of the woman her father loved so dearly. She explains that her father's expressions vanished because he loved her mother too much to bear the loss. The tragedy that broke their family started the moment her mother died. In a flashback, her cold father orders servants to get the wandering child out of his sight. Little Francesca stares blankly, processing the harsh rejection. She stands silently behind him, her eyes hidden by her bangs as he ignores her. A small hand grips the fabric of his coat in a desperate bid for attention. She begs to accompany him, promising she won't get in the way of his work. He walks away, coldly ordering her removed from his sight. Undeterred, she continues to chase after her father with all her might. She clings to his back, unafraid of his glare because of the scary men she faced in her previous life. No matter how many times he tore her off and pushed her away, she refused to give up. Her persistence continues until he finally stops one day. Furious, he whips around and demands to know what the hell she wants. He lists his neglect, noting he hasn't even given her a sweet, yet she still follows him. He demands an answer, asking just what it is she is after. She replies that she wants nothing, though internally she admits she had a calculated motive back then. She viewed fixing their relationship as a necessary condition for a peaceful life. But to him, she simply said she wanted to spend time with her dad as his daughter. Back in the present, she recalls seeing her father look at her mother's picture only once. Francesca reflects that her father's blank expression hid his heart, leaving her to guess his true thoughts. A quiet apology echoes in her mind, carrying the weight of past regrets. She concludes that her father must be thinking exactly what she fears most. In a flashback, a young Francesca apologizes to her father, convinced she is the cause of her mother's death. Standing before a closed door, the child tearfully insists it is her fault her mother died. Tears stream down her face as she repeats her heartbreaking apology. In the present, she holds Leonardo's hand, admitting that in her previous life, she also felt responsible for her mother's death. She leans her head against his chest, describing her burden as guilt and penance. This lingering guilt, she explains, is the reason she carries such weight in this life. Leonardo gently interrupts her self-blame, telling her firmly that it is not her fault. He holds her close and assures her there is no way she should be held responsible for her mother's death. Francesca recalls the pivotal moment her father finally called her by name and apologized. She notes that while he takes her everywhere now, that moment by the grave was the only time he ever shed a tear. She decides to step away to give her parents some time alone, prompting Leonardo to ask why. She smiles, reasoning that a daughter should not interfere with her parents' dates. Leonardo stops, looking at her with a contemplative expression as he processes her words. He reveals that he prepared the flowers as a gift for her mother upon hearing of the visit. He remarks that visiting the grave is a way of seeing her, even if she is just resting. He explains that the people of this world do not believe the souls of the deceased remain in their graves. Unlike in Japan, praying to the dead is not a custom here, making grave visits fundamentally different. He describes the visit as simply a ritual to keep the memory of the deceased alive in one's heart. He catches her off guard by asking if she was speaking to her mother just now. Smiling, he claims his insight is only natural since they are friends, leaving her flustered. Francesca wonders internally if he realizes there are secrets she cannot share even with a friend. She acknowledges there are burdens she can only confess to her mama. Her mind races with worries about the mastermind behind the next incident and the drug crisis. Clutching her skirt, she tries to force herself to stop getting anxious. She admits that while she never doubted Leonardo was the mastermind before, she is no longer sure. A terrifying thought takes root that one of her loved ones might be the true mastermind. She fears an enemy who manipulates thoughts with skills or that someone she cares about is involved in the drug crisis. Leonardo suddenly produces a black rose, interrupting her spiral and amazing her. He keeps the source a secret and tucks the flower into her hair, startling her with the gesture. He compliments her, saying the color of the rose perfectly suits her hair. She agrees shyly, recalling his earlier confession about feeling lonely around her. He explains this was a strategy to cheer up his friend who has been lost in thought for days. She stares at him, murmuring his name in surprise. Leonardo laughs and admits he felt lonely because she was thinking about something else while hanging out with him. Realizing the flower was a bid for attention, she laughs along with him. He teases that she is charming and cute, so flowers naturally suit her. Touching the rose, she smiles and thanks him, noting how strange it is that she feels happy despite the suspicion surrounding her. She looks at his back, realizing the person she suspected for 12 years is now the one she feels most relaxed around. She wonders if her long-held suspicion is ironically what allows her to behave normally with him. Steeling herself, she calls out to him with a serious expression. She tells him there is something she needs to know. She asks him directly if he was involved in the incident at the full moon ball. With a close-up of Leonardo's sharp eye, betraying no immediate answer. Amidst the quiet gravestones, Francesca asks the question that has been weighing on her mind. Were you involved in the incident at the full moon ball? Silence hangs between them before she prompts him again with a sharp, insistent call. Leonardo offers a cynical smile, asking if she truly believes he would tell her the truth even if he was involved. Francesca asserts that she does believe him, claiming that little by little, she has finally started to understand his true nature. He lets out a short, dismissive breath, looking away with a guarded expression. Francesca kneels beside him, declaring that while he is a trickster, she does not believe he is someone who outright lies or deceives people. She explains her reasoning, confident that if it is him, the methods would be different. She insists that no matter who the enemy is, he has the capability to achieve his goals. Francesca stares him down, stating firmly that he doesn't need to resort to dirty tricks just to best someone. Leonardo chuckles darkly, telling her that she thinks far too highly of him. He claims he is not a good person and is more than willing to play dirty to get what he wants. Francesca counters immediately, asking why he hasn't simply denied his involvement if he is so willing to lie. She points out that he phrased his answer carefully to avoid having to tell her a direct lie. Her gaze pierces through his defenses as she accuses him of trying to make her doubt him. It seems almost as if he is deliberately trying to warn her not to trust him. Leonardo laughs off her analysis, though his expression remains unreadable. A faint, self-deprecating smile touches his lips as he prepares to deflect again. He states plainly that he is a liar, trying to push her away with the admission. He confesses that her virtue of never doubting anyone's intentions is exactly why he worries about her. He warns that if she keeps blindly trusting others, the world she lives in will eventually betray her. Francesca reaches out, her hand moving toward his face despite his warnings. She gently cups his cheek, surprising him into silence. Softly, she tells him that her father and older brother were just like him. She explains that they were also people who desperately wanted to believe the best in others. Leonardo's smile falters as he listens to her comparison. Francesca reveals that their trusting nature is the very reason they were betrayed. 7 years ago, they went to an enemy family with honest intentions and lost their lives because of it. She admits that even as a child, she understood how easily her father could be killed due to his honesty. Francesca realizes that Leonardo's backstory was never detailed in the game, leaving much of him a mystery. Before knowing him, she might have been disgusted by his cavalier attitude, but now she sees something else. She cuts to the heart of the matter, asking him directly if he likes her. The question hangs in the air, stripping away his evasive maneuvers. Leonardo smiles softly, letting out a small breath of resignation. He deflects again, stating warmly that she is his dear friend. The declaration of friendship repeats, emphasizing the barrier he is trying to maintain. Francesca presses on, deducing that he sees himself in her father and brother. She concludes that Leonardo must have deeply loved his own father and brother as well. Leonardo looks stunned, his mask cracking at the mention of his family. He stares at her, shaken by her insight. Francesca shouts her affirmation, certain that he must have loved the ones who passed away. Leonardo stands frozen, unable to find a retort to her emotional logic. She grabs his hand, demanding he prove his feelings. She challenges him to say he likes her if it truly isn't a lie. Desperate for the truth, she begs him to say the words. His hand grip tightens, trembling slightly under her touch. He pulls her close, his resistance finally crumbling. Leonardo embraces her tightly, burying his face in her shoulder. In a hoarse voice, he finally admits that he likes her. Francesca notes there is no flexibility in his voice, only raw honesty. His touch feels desperate as he clings to her, revealing his vulnerability. Her heart clenches at the sound of his confession, spoken in a slightly hoarse whisper. Leonardo pulls Francesca into a sudden, tight embrace, burying his face against her shoulder. He holds her firmly, his grip desperate as if seeking an anchor in the storm of his own emotions. Francesca's eyes widen in shock, her breath hitching as she processes the raw vulnerability in his touch. His hand slowly slides from her back, the warmth of the contact lingering as he begins to pull away. Leonardo gently pushes her back by her shoulders, creating a physical distance between them. He looks at her with a guarded expression, prompting a confused question from her trembling lips. A faint, masking smile touches his face as he asks if his sudden movement startled her. He observes her closely, remarking that she really isn't the type to be suspicious of others. His expression darkens with concern as he admits he is seriously worried she will be tricked by a bad man. Flashbacks of dark rumors swirl in her mind, recounting the gossip that everyone has been tricked by him. Francesca steals her gaze, thinking resolutely that she will not be fooled by the lies surrounding him. She dismisses the horrific rumor that Leonardo killed his father and brother as a malicious falsehood. Her conviction solidifies, her eyes reflecting a deep and unwavering trust in his true character. Leonardo smiles with a self-deprecating air, starting his sentence with an unfortunate truth. He states plainly that he will not tell her anything about his involvement in the drug incident. He warns her that if she wants a peaceful life on the surface, she must not stick her nose into his affairs. His gaze turns cold and distant as he advises that sometimes it is better to distance oneself from important people. Francesca stands silent and unmoving, absorbing his attempt to push her away for her own safety. He releases her hand, severing their connection and preparing to walk away from her. As he turns to leave, Francesca finds her voice, beginning to articulate her own stance. She admits internally that she doesn't know the rules of friendship, as Leonardo is the first one she has ever had. However, she recalls the stories she loves and the types of friends she has always admired. She realizes that true friends are exactly the kind of people who would stick their noses in when it matters. A fierce determination takes root in her heart, driving her to act on her realization. She lunges forward and grabs his hand, shouting that she will not let him go. Her mind replays her conviction, reinforcing the idea that a real friend would never simply walk away. She grips his hand tighter, repeating her refusal to let him leave her behind. Leonardo looks back in genuine surprise, his eyes widening at her stubborn refusal to be pushed away. A complex mix of emotions flickers across his face as he stares at her determined expression. He asks softly if this path of involvement is truly what she wants to choose. With a resigned sigh, he relents, realizing he cannot easily dissuade her from her course. Francesca beams at him, telling him that his concern is exactly the kind of person he truly is. She reflects on her lingering fear that someone important to her might secretly be a villain. She thinks of her father, knowing that despite his coldness, he truly loves her. She considers Graciano, whom she has been close with since childhood and views as a little brother. She thinks of Ricardo, her loyal classmate who is willing to keep her secrets. Now she counts Leonardo among them, smiling at the thought that the alleged mastermind is her friend. She holds on to the belief that none of them are the type to take pleasure in doing terrible things. She resolves that even if one of them is an enemy, she knows exactly what she must do. Her mission is clear, she must put a stop to the drug epidemic once and for all. She steels herself for the possibility that a loved one is being forced into a villainous role. Even if Leonardo is truly the mastermind, she vows to absolutely stop him to save him. She squeezes his hand affectionately, declaring that saving him is her job as his friend. Leonardo smiles, genuinely glad, while Francesca strikes a playful pose to lighten the mood. He notes the chill in the air and suggests they head back, to which she agrees happily. They walk away together side by side, leaving the solitude of the cemetery behind. The wind rustles through the trees, whispering over the grave of Serafine Calvino. With a final glance back, Francesca bids her mother a warm farewell. They leave the cemetery behind, walking side by side as the wind carries their silent promise into the distance. Night settles over the estate, the crescent moon casting a pale, ominous glow upon the sleeping mansion. Francesca tosses and turns in her bed, her mind too restless to find the comfort of sleep. She sits up abruptly, clutching her pillow as a heavy sigh escapes her lips. Hugging the pillow tight, she realizes she has finally calmed down thanks to Leonardo's presence. She notes the date is May 25th, knowing she must now formulate a strategy for the impending events. Reviewing the game's timeline, she realizes they are approaching the critical latter half of Chapter 1. A realization strikes her like lightning that the events are proceeding exactly as they did in the game. She resolves that while the flow is the same, she can still alter the content and the ending. Clenching her hand, she reviews the upcoming in-game scenario with grim determination. In the original story, the protagonist and Ricardo investigate the brawl and pin Leonardo as the mastermind. Desperate to confront him, the duo scrambles to form an alliance between their powerful families. They succeed in getting Francesca's and Ricardo's fathers to accompany them to a series of urgent meetings. Francesca notes that while her relationship with her father isn't perfect, he is at least willing to hear her out now. To solidify the alliance, the heads of both families head to a specific, secluded mansion. The location is a neutral ground run by a former Underworld patron, designed to ensure fair discussions. Strict wards ban weapons and offensive skills within the grounds to guarantee safety. However, the game's script dictates that someone intervenes to shatter this peace. Leonardo reveals himself with a chilling smirk, accepting the role of the villainous mastermind. His interference traps the protagonist and Ricardo inside the mansion, cutting off their escape. Although their lives are endangered by the flames, they manage a desperate escape. This near-death experience becomes the catalyst that forces the two families to form an alliance. Francesca's eyes sharpen as she recalls the disastrous consequences of this sequence. She sighs deeply, acknowledging that this chaotic scenario is what awaits her next. However, she realizes reality has changed since she never investigated the drug incident with Ricardo. Despite this difference, she predicts an event will still occur to bring everyone to that meeting place. As if on cue, she knows the invitation will be sent by the Serenova family. The event is scheduled for tomorrow, May 26th, on the first new moon after midterms. If the scenario proceeds as written, the Calvino and Serenova families will deepen their ties. The ultimate result of this alliance would be the annulment of her. An imposing Gothic structure looms under the sky, signaling the end of another school day. Students flood the courtyard, chatting in groups while Francesca walks separately from the crowd. A group of girls calls out to her, inviting her to join everyone at the ice cream parlor. Francesca declines the offer, her attention suddenly caught by a familiar voice nearby. She finds Graciano leaning against a wall, sighing that she has finally arrived. Graciano looks exhausted as Francesca calls out his name in surprise. His female admirers immediately surround him, begging him to hang out with them tomorrow. They wave goodbye to him and Francesca, whom they refer to as Graciano's sister, leaving her bewildered. Graciano looks around in confusion while Francesca comments on how wonderful his friends are. The group of girls spots the two of them standing together again. They whisper enthusiastically about what close siblings the pair appear to be. One girl gushes over how cute it is that the brother waits at the gates, while Graciano addresses Francesca as "young miss" with a sigh. He points out that she has refused to take the carriage home once again. She reminds him that she walks with a friend now and asks why he left without her that morning. Graciano stammers, caught off guard by her question. He stares at her intently, asking with skepticism if she was actually able to make a friend. He insists that if it is true, he should come along to meet this new friend next time. Francesca panics, claiming that an introduction so early in the morning would be too tough for him. A realization dawns on her as she looks at his tired face. She identifies this as his overcooked machi kinshiga mode, knowing he melts into a useless state in the mornings. A voice calls out, "Hey, first year," just as Francesca asks if he has to stay after school. An upperclassman confronts Graciano, asking if he doesn't have tutoring today. He scolds Graciano for falling asleep during a test and orders him to head straight to Mr. Serenova. Graciano agrees obediently while Francesca thanks him for his help. Graciano grumbles that they will be 15 seconds late and urges her to walk faster. Francesca suddenly stops in her tracks as a tall figure looms over her. Ricardo looks down at her with a stoic expression. Francesca realizes that Ricardo knows she is the daughter of the Calvino family. She feels grateful that he keeps Graciano out of trouble and respects her circumstances without prying. She suspects he hasn't told anyone about her skill because he thinks she's been acting weird, while Graciano just wants to spend time with her. Ricardo apologizes to Graciano, interrupting Francesca's thoughts. Francesca lets out a small sound of surprise. She abruptly announces that Leonardo is waiting for her and she has to leave immediately. The scene shifts to a bustling city street lined with European-style buildings. Francesca and Leonardo arrive at the Gelateria. A sign outside displays various flavors of ice cream and cones. Inside, a glass case is filled with mounds of colorful gelato. Francesca beams with excitement, telling Leonardo that this parlor has been popular recently. Leonardo offers to wait in line while she finds a seat, but she insists on joining him. Changing her mind, she decides to find a sunny spot for them and calls it Divide and Conquer. Leonardo hands her his bag as she prepares to secure their table. Sitting alone, she reflects that she and Leonardo have become close enough to ask each other for small favors. She notes that he still insists on using her money to prove they are equals, even though he has far more wealth as a family head. Her expression darkens as she thinks about the political implications of their bond. She realizes an envoy from the Serenova house will have arrived at her home today to propose an alliance. They will have determined Leonardo is the mastermind and will want to work with her family to eliminate the Aldinis. She recalls that in the game, the conflict with the Aldini family intensifies once this alliance is formed. A look of worry crosses her face as she questions if it is really okay to change the relationships between the families right now. Francesca analyzes the situation, concluding that without knowing the mastermind's identity or intentions, making sudden moves would be unwise. Gazing out the window, she reaffirms her goal to break her engagement without making enemies of Leonardo or the Aldini family. Her expression softens into melancholy as she admits to herself that she simply doesn't want to hurt them. Leonardo returns to the table, apologizing for keeping her waiting. Francesca is surprised by his quick return, noting the speed as he holds 2 ice cream cones. He smiles charmingly, explaining that the line moved quickly while female customers swoon in the background. Francesca delights in her chocolate chip ice cream, humming happily as they begin to eat. Leonardo watches her closely, asking what she was thinking about so seriously just a moment ago. She deflects his question, lying that she was merely wondering how to go about making more friends. Leonardo's expression drops into a pout, prompting Francesca to ask if he is sulking. He admits that he was thinking, "But I'm right here," feeling slighted by her desire for others. He claims his friendship is worth 100 others, but Francesca retorts that he has friends besides her. Leonardo insists that Francesca is special because she was his first friend, though she maintains she wants others too. She smiles warmly, assuring him that he is indeed special to her. Leonardo looks at her with a gentle gaze as she confirms his importance between bites of ice cream. A soft smile plays on his lips as he absorbs her words. His expression turns serious as he asks her to promise him something. Taking her hand, he asks her to promise that even if she makes other friends, he will remain the most important. Francesca flushes, stammering as she tries to find the right words to respond to his intensity. She asks tentatively if he means they should be best friends. Beaming with relief, she agrees that they are best friends and laughs joyfully. She enthusiastically suggests they should hang out often to cement their new status. Leonardo repeats the term best friend, with a complicated expression, seemingly wanting more. Francesca's attention snaps to his hand as she notices a drip. She points out that his ice cream is melting, prompting a casual oops from him. He brings his hand to his mouth, licking the melted cream from his fingers. The gesture is unexpectedly sensual, focusing on his lips touching his skin. Francesca blushes furiously and gasps, while the onlookers in the shop react with similar shock. She thinks he is frighteningly beautiful and feels the atmosphere in the shop brighten around him. Noticing his ice cream has a strange color, she asks him what flavor he chose. Leonardo offers her a bite, holding his cone out for her to try. He feeds her a spoonful directly, wishing her bon appetit. Francesca tastes it, noting that it is chocolate-flavored and quite delicious. She swallows the bite, a strange sensation taking hold. She remarks that it tastes both bitter and a little too sweet. Describing it as a very adult-like flavor, she notices Leonardo's sudden look of alarm. He asks if she is kidding, realizing something is terribly wrong. Francesca's vision begins to swim, flowers blooming in her peripheral sight as dizziness hits. Her eyes lose focus, swirling in confusion as she lets out a weak sound. Leonardo drops his ice cream in panic as Francesca mumbles that her head feels fuzzy. He rushes forward to catch her, screaming her name as she collapses. He catches her falling body, his face etched with fear and concern. Francesca lies unconscious in his arms. In a recording studio in 2024, the author worries about looming deadlines while watching the session unfold. The absurdly excellent cast is revealed, featuring Tamatsu Haruka as Francesca, Uchida Yuma as Leonardo, Otsuka Takeo as Graciano, and Namikawa Daisuke as Ewald. A voice test begins to establish the correct tone and speaking style for each character. Haruka Tamatsu performs Francesca, perfectly capturing the adorable contrast between her excited self and her cool demeanor. Yuma Uchida steps into the role of Leonardo, his voice rendering the character incredibly cute. The author is struck by how sexy Leonardo sounds and the fantastic difference in his tone when speaking to Francesca versus others. The recording pauses as a question is raised to clarify a character's mindset. Takeo Otsuka, playing Graciano, asks deep questions about who his character is thinking of. He proves his professionalism by recognizing complicated emotions that are merely implied in the scene. Daisuke Namikawa plays Ewald, acting as the reliable father figure who livens up the entire recording site. Despite having unusually long lines and big size, he handles them easily with his overwhelming skill. Shoya Ishige, Riko Takahashi, and Fujiwara are introduced as the CU responsible for the background characters like schoolgirls and thugs. The director instructs them to ad-lib incidental background lines continuously until he says stop. The room fills with a chaotic buzz of improvised chatter, distinct voices overlapping in a noisy crowd scene. The author is overwhelmed and amazed by the actors' ability to improvise voices of all ages and genders. Surprised and impressed by the performances, the author urges fans to listen to the CD drama or check the video on YouTube. Concept sketches show Ricardo in formal white and blue night attire, Francesca in practical casual wear, and a jacketless papa eager to see her. Graciano berates Leonardo, insisting he has no right to be there and demanding he leave immediately. Leonardo refuses, asserting he must take responsibility and ensure Francesca wakes up before Graciano orders him back to his menial job. Leonardo smiles silently while Graciano continues his tirade, but a soft moan from the bed interrupts them. Leonardo greets the waking girl with a gentle, "Good morning," as Graciano exclaims in relief. Francesca opens her eyes, looking dazed and flushed as she recovers from her faint. Graciano frantically offers to call a doctor and asks if she is all right. Francesca vaguely wonders if she dropped the last bit of her ice cream. Graciano is confused by her priority, while Leonardo stifles a laugh at the absurdity. Leonardo apologizes with a smirk, admitting he didn't realize she couldn't tolerate alcohol. Francesca is shocked by the mention of alcohol and tries to piece together how she got home. She realizes her alcohol tolerance is incredibly low, noting that while the game never mentioned it, in this world one must be 18 to drink. Suddenly, Leonardo leans in close, invading her personal space and startling her. He touches her face, noting her redness and remarking that his cold hands must feel good against her skin. A hand aggressively grabs Leonardo's wrist, stopping his caress mid-motion. Graciano forcefully pulls Leonardo's hand away, warning him not to touch the young miss so casually, to which Leonardo mocks him as a poorly trained guard dog. Graciano retorts that he is trained to kill enemies even if he has to chew off his own collar, while Francesca wonders why they are fighting. Francesca interrupts to explain she just had a bite of ice cream that must have had alcohol in it, begging Graciano not to misunderstand. Graciano looks skeptical, suggesting it is more likely she was drugged given the circumstances. Francesca realizes she has messed up by eating ice cream with this guy, and panic sets in as Graciano questions her. She remembers she hasn't told anyone that her friend is actually Leonardo. She recalls her father's stern warning to let him know first if she ever intends to get involved with men. The memory of her father questioning her about getting involved plays in her mind as she looks confused. She remembers promising to tell him, though he muttered that she didn't actually have to make male friends. He had threatened to use the family's strength to investigate any boys who approached her under the pretense of friendship. Her father promised to take action against those who failed his standards, leaving Francesca sweating with nervousness. She decides to stick to the simple story that she made a friend, keeping it vague to avoid trouble. She admits she kept Leonardo's identity a secret to protect the peace, but now the truth is threatening to come out. Graciano stares at her with intense suspicion, waiting for an explanation as she struggles under his gaze. Trapped, Francesca decides she has no choice but to be honest and starts to confess. Leonardo interrupts smoothly, declaring, of course, to cut off her confession and control the narrative. He boldly states that he and Francesca are engaged, shocking both her and Graciano. He declares that she will be his bride in the future, leaving Graciano dumbfounded and asking what he is saying. Leonardo winks at Francesca, spinning a tale that she was sad her friend cancelled plans, so he stepped in. He claims they went on a date instead to cheer her up, asking if that wasn't the case. Leonardo explains he fills in when he has time to kill, acting the part of the devoted fiancé while challenging Graciano with a smirk. Francesca stammers, agreeing that he was just trying to cheer her up, frantically supporting his fabricated story. Leonardo grabs her hand tenderly, asking, "How could I not?" in a display of faux affection. He smiles charmingly, saying he would hate for her to be bored. Leonardo turns to leave, walking past the bed curtains as the date concludes. Graciano's expression darkens, his eyes narrowing with deep suspicion as he watches Leonardo. Leonardo's eyes gleam with a sharp, calculating light as he walks away, dropping the playful act. He bids them farewell, apologizing for disturbing the guests now that Francesca is awake. Graciano warns Leonardo that the family head didn't change his plans for him and that everything is for the young miss. Leonardo thanks him for the polite reminder with a hint of sarcasm before heading out. He grips the door handle firmly, preparing to exit the room. He calls out Francesca's name one last time before leaving. He cheerfully asks to go on another date soon, sealing their agreement. Francesca agrees enthusiastically, interpreting it as plans to hang out as friends, and blushes happily. She waves goodbye energetically as he leaves, relieved that their secret is safe for now. Leonardo offers a parting smirk that lingers in the air as he makes his exit. The door clicks shut, leaving Graciano standing in silence beside the bed while Francesca remains frozen. Francesca clutches her chest, her heart pounding furiously as the adrenaline of the moment catches up to her. She presses her hand against her racing heart, overwhelmed by the lingering tension and the sudden quiet. Blushing deeply, she admits to herself that acting like lovers with him was incredibly embarrassing. Graciano urges her to rest, assuring her the maid saw him out, but Francesca regrets not saying a proper goodbye. A soft chuckle escapes Graciano, prompting a curious look from his mistress. She smiles warmly and thanks him for his concern during the chaotic visit. Graciano averts his gaze, a faint blush dusting his cheeks at her sincerity. Recovering his composure, he hands her water and notes that her red face suggests she is still tipsy. Francesca spots a solitary black rose left behind on the bedside table. She realizes Leonardo left the black rose and watches as Graciano offers to find a vase for it. Curious about the gesture, she asks Graciano if he knows what black roses symbolize. He feigns ignorance and turns the question back to her. Francesca explains that she studied flower meanings because the royal family bestows them for family crests. She begins to explain that the black rose of the Aldini family carries a specific and heavy weight. She reveals that the flower represents hatred. While ironic for the power-hungry Aldinis, she notes it also symbolizes grudges and an undying refusal to forgive. Graciano thinks it is impossible for the family head to be ignorant of his own crest's meaning. He interprets the gift to the young miss as nothing short of a declaration of war. Francesca gazes solemnly at the dark petals, lost in thought over the complicated message. She closes her eyes, contemplating the heavy burden behind the flower's beauty. Graciano breaks the silence, politely asking if he should fill the vase with water now. He reaches out towards her, his hand moving with sudden intent. Instead of taking the vase, he roughly ruffles her hair, startling her completely. Flustered and confused by the sudden contact, she demands to know what he is doing. He simply tells her that it is all right, his voice gentle despite the rough gesture. Francesca questions his reassurance, admitting that Leonardo might indeed be a villain as he suspects. She argues that being born into the underworld gave him no choice but to adapt to that darkness. She believes he simply behaves in a way necessary to survive and fit into that harsh world. Francesca insists that beneath the surface, Leonardo is more like a regular boy than one might expect. She asserts he isn't bad at heart and begs Graciano not to worry, leaving him stunned by her faith. Graciano lets out a long, resigned sigh at her unwavering optimism. He looks at her with a mix of exasperation and care, muttering that she always acts this way. He criticizes her habit of finding the good in even the vilest scum, though he admits that wasn't his point. He scolds her firmly, calling it a bad habit she needs to be more aware of for her own safety. Francesca smiles sheepishly and accepts his scolding. She thanks him again, her smile returning as the tension eases between them. Graciano suddenly shifts the topic, his tone turning serious. Francesca asks about the guests he mentioned earlier, realizing it involves the Serenova head. A knock at the door interrupts them, and Francesca realizes it is Ricardo's father. Her father enters the room, relieved to see that Francesca is finally awake. He stands there catching his breath, clearly having rushed to her side in a panic. Her father's expression turns grave as he states there is. The story shifts to the following day, setting the scene inside the school disciplinary committee office. Francesca breaks the silence, asking Ricardo about his own situation regarding the upcoming events. Ricardo confirms that his father spoke to him the previous night as well. He reveals that he is scheduled to attend a meeting with his father and the Calvino family head in 3 days. Francesca notes that her instructions were the same, including the specific request to ensure she is well-dressed. Ricardo adds that his father dodged his questions and refused to explain the reason for the meeting. A chewing sound interrupts the serious conversation as Francesca munches on something. Ricardo stares at her with deadpan exasperation, addressing her simply as "lady." He snaps, yelling at her to either eat or talk, but to pick one immediately. Without a moment's hesitation, Francesca chooses to continue eating her bread. She justifies her choice by claiming the new cafeteria bread is delicious and asks if he wants some too. After finishing her meal with a satisfied sigh, she attempts to steer the conversation back to the topic at hand. She expresses concern about her father's unusual behavior regarding the meeting. Francesca explains that her father has always been understanding of her desire to avoid the underworld. Because of this, he has never asked her to attend such meetings until now. Ricardo listens silently, his expression unreadable as he absorbs her worries. Francesca admits she was so surprised by the request that she agreed without thinking. She recalls the original game scenario where this meeting was held to discuss an alliance between their two houses. In the game, this event serves as the catalyst for Francesca and Ricardo to confront Leonardo. The confrontation is based on the revelation that Leonardo is the mastermind behind the drug epidemic. However, Francesca realizes that events have unfolded differently in this reality. She notes that they still don't know the cause of the fighting or have any proof against Leonardo. She concludes that, logically, there is no reason for the alliance meeting to take place at this point. A sudden realization strikes her as she connects the dots. She remembers that Leonardo contacted her that morning to say he would be absent from school for a few days. She wonders if his absence is somehow related to the upcoming meeting. Francesca proposes they stay in contact until the meeting day to keep each other informed of any developments. Ricardo remains silent and looks downcast, prompting Francesca to call his name. He suggests that this entire situation might be happening because of his own inadequacy. While Francesca is confused, Ricardo explains he was ordered to investigate the drug epidemic. He confesses that despite his efforts, he hasn't been able to uncover a single lead. He believes his father has given up on him due to his incompetence and is turning to the Calvino family instead. Francesca tries to argue that he is brilliant, but he bitterly questions what exactly makes him so. He fears that if he cannot solve this matter, he will be disqualified from inheriting his father's title. He emphasizes that the Serenova house values tradition above all, specifically the ban on drug trafficking. Francesca realizes he must be investigating daily, while Ricardo states that anyone who can't do that much is unfit to lead. He reveals he even spends his break times at the academy gathering information. He has been pouring all his energy into this investigation for a while now. Despite his efforts, he feels he is failing to live up to his father's expectations. He laments that his failure will also result in his family losing its credibility. His thoughts turn to Leonardo, noting that even though they are the same age, he feels they are leagues apart because Aldini is already successfully leading his family. Ricardo clutches his chest in frustration, his confidence shattering. He whispers that he really is unfit for the role he was born into. As he declares himself unfit to become the next family head, Francesca cuts him off. She slams her hands down and shouts that his words are not true, startling him. Gathering her thoughts, she begins to quote something someone once told her. She recites that what is important for high positions in the underworld is the power to maintain order and lead subordinates, not just brute strength. Francesca explains that the 5 families follow underworld rules and covenants to coexist with the royal family. She notes that it is the family's responsibility to control people from behind the scenes, and Ricardo agrees. She brings up the topic of maintaining order among those below him. Francesca asserts that Ricardo definitely possesses that ability. She points out that he is the head of the Academy's Student Disciplinary Committee as proof. She praises his ability to lead surface dwellers, noting that everyone acts dignified and wears their uniforms properly around him. She highlights that he is the only one who could convince Graciano to attend tutoring, proving his influence. Francesca reevaluates his father's actions regarding the threat to his inheritance. She argues that his father gave him the order because he trusted him more than anyone else to solve the problem. She reasons that entrusting him with such a reputation-critical job proves his father sees him as the most suitable heir. Ricardo is stunned by her interpretation and mutters about his father. He asks hesitantly if she really thought that about him. Francesca enthusiastically confirms it with a resounding, definitely. She suddenly realizes she might have been insensitive while he was venting and panics, apologizing profusely. Ricardo chuckles gently, admitting he might have explained his feelings wrong earlier. He clarifies that being stripped of his title is not what truly frustrates him. He clenches his fist, focusing on what matters more to him than anything else. He declares that he cannot forgive the spread of drugs that threaten the lives of the city's people. Francesca empathizes deeply, recalling her own vow to protect the city she considers her home. Ricardo vows to crush anyone who threatens that peace. He accepts that he may be a villain, but asserts he will be one in his own way. Francesca smiles with determination, stating she won't budge on her principles either. Ricardo stands up, affirming, "That's why," as Francesca looks on. He states that damaging his family's reputation isn't his primary concern. Francesca looks at him with surprise as he clarifies his priorities. He declares he doesn't care if anyone calls him unfit to lead as long as he upholds his duty. Francesca smiles knowingly and accepts his resolve. Ricardo speculates that the true reason for the meeting is actually financial. He suspects his father plans to ask the Calvino head for support since the Serenova family has been struggling. Francesca agrees it is possible, recalling that their fathers were classmates back in the day. She remembers hearing that the tradition-focused Serenovas often struggle with the business side of things. A loud stomach growl interrupts the serious moment, and Francesca looks mortified as she admits she is hungry. Ricardo realizes she hasn't eaten and suggests they hurry to the cafeteria before lunch ends. He is baffled that she isn't full, while she excitedly recommends the bread. She chatters about a chicken sandwich as they walk. Ricardo calls out to her gently as they reach the door. Francesca turns back, expressing hope that the meeting is nothing serious. Ricardo agrees, sharing her hope that it goes well. The scene shifts to a darkened room where a figure stands by a window. A subordinate reports to Leonardo, delivering information on the matter in question. Leonardo acknowledges the report with a simple, "I see." He grins menacingly, declaring that this is going to be even more fun than he imagined.